Welcome to another exciting episode of Submission Radio. It's January 11th. I'm Dennis Scroutov. I'm here with Kasper Ozolowski. We are very excited to be back in our first episode for 2015.
Yeah, my sentiments exactly, Dennis. It's really great to be back. We had about 2 weeks layoff, a lot of stuff to cover, a lot of stuff to talk about, and of course, big guests are on the horizon. We've got none other than John Kavanagh. He's the first black belt in Ireland in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and of course, is Conor McGregor's coach. So we're going to be chatting to him. We've got, obviously, the natural Randy Couture, living legend. He's coming back to the show. His third stop to Submission Radio to talk about a whole bunch of things, the UFC lawsuit, Jon Jones, etc. And speaking of Jon Jones, we have Jon Jones' coach, Mike Winkeljohn of Jackson Winkeljohn's gym in Albuquerque. He's going to be on the show for, I believe, the fourth time, and there's a lot to talk about with him, especially Cowboy Cerrone, and of course, Jon Jones, the cocaine test, all that kind of stuff. Stick around. It's going to be an awesome show. I can't wait.
Absolutely, Kasper. And, you know, Randy Couture, he has a lot of great products such as colognes. He's got that gym system. He's got a lot of great T-shirts. You know, we had a marketing department come up with some new ideas for Randy in terms of products that he could possibly try in the future. And let's just say some of these ideas are pretty out there, guys. So make sure you stick around to listen to the tap out round for this one. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised at how good our marketing department is at coming up with product ideas.
Now, just a bit of housekeeping, of course, our Twitter at SubmissionAUS. Give that one a follow for all the latest Submission Radio news. And, of course, the MMA headlines, our channel. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. And we are available, if you're watching this on YouTube and you don't have the time, we are available on Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes. We are on SoundCloud now. Pretty much everywhere, anywhere where podcasts are, we can be found.
That's right. We find you anywhere you go. You can't escape us. Now, Cass, like you mentioned, big show. I think we should get right into it. And we have our first guest on the line as we speak.
All right, guys. Our next guest is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He runs the Straight Blast Gym in Ireland, and he trains fighters such as Gunnar Nelson, Aisling Daly, Cathal Pendred, and, of course, Conor McGregor. He is none other than John Kavanagh. John, welcome to Submission Radio. How are you?
It's an honor to be here, and it's a great day. So thanks for having me on.
It's our pleasure. And I believe you're the first Irish person we've had on Submission Radio, so it's a big milestone for us too. Now, let's talk about you and how you started. You know, we had a chance to watch a short clip about your life, and it was fascinating seeing where you began compared to where you are now. Let's start at the beginning. You mentioned you started coaching from age 18. What drove you to be a coach at such a young age?
I was actually even younger than that. When I was doing karate, when I was about 14, my instructor then started having me take some of the classes. I always enjoyed teaching. It's been a fascination of mine my whole life. I actually figured that if this didn't work out, I was going to be a school teacher. I was going to be a math teacher. So it's just always been a pleasure of mine that you get to show somebody something they didn't know before, and you get that kind of aha moment. Their eyes widen a bit, and it's especially when you get to teach something as fun as martial arts, and maybe they're stuck in a position, they've no way out, and then you show it to them, and it almost appears like you're teaching them magic. So it's a very rewarding career, and yeah, I've just since I've been involved in martial arts, I've been involved in the teaching side of it, and it's a lot of fun for me.
Interesting, and almost went down the road of Rich Franklin being a maths teacher. So very interesting.
Yeah,
not
when I was in university, I did a degree in engineering and maths, and even when I was graduating, I had in my head I didn't particularly want to work in the field, but I had sort of had in my head maybe I could go back and become a maths teacher in university, and then obviously years later I heard Rich Franklin was a maths teacher. I thought that was quite a funny coincidence, I guess.
Yeah, you guys can run an MMA seminar / maths class together one day. It'll draw a lot of numbers. Fun. Now, while we were researching you, we saw that you moved around to a lot of different gyms. You had a lot of different gyms. One of them you referred to as the garage. It was a bit of a smaller space. It was one of your first schools. Tell us, what was the MMA landscape like in Ireland during that time? What was it like?
Yeah, a bit of a smaller space. That's one way of putting it. It was about 40 square meters. The roof fell in on us one day. Wow. We had to go to the toilet in a laneway outside. It was freezing cold. It was pretty miserable. But it was my first full time in big inverted commas gym from when I graduated from college, and it was all I could afford. It was me and about 20 guys. I guess the landscape in Ireland was there was maybe maybe 2 or 3 other clubs in the whole country. I think on last count we have just under 90 clubs now in Ireland.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure I'm in the biggest facility in the country, but there's a few other ones that are big full-time gyms as well. So it's been I guess it's 13 years now since then. It has grown somewhat gradually, but definitely in the last 4 years, 5 years, there's been a massive spurt, a massive growth.
Yeah, and it seems to be the trend pretty much with MMA and in general, martial arts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu all over the world. Now, we read on your bio that you are Ireland's first and currently only black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Is that still accurate, and how did you bring the sport down to Ireland?
Well, you've just given me some info there that I need to go and change that, because although I was first, I believe now there's probably more than 10 black belts, more than 10 Irish black belts. So I'm going to have to go out to my webmaster to change that. It's not something that I read all that often, so I wasn't aware it still said that. But I was the first one, which is, I guess, one of those things. Historically, it's nice to be the first to do something.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of very solid, really good competitive black belts in jiu-jitsu. Much more accomplished than I ever was in the competitive aspect of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. The BJJ, the pure BJJ scene here is flourishing. A lot of guys bringing it a lot further than I had. My goal, or not my goal, my passion was always for grappling in MMA. I was always fascinated how Brazilian jiu-jitsu could be used in mixed martial arts fights, and that's the area that I kind of got lost in, fell into, and enjoyed developing, and that's what I enjoy coaching.
Yeah, and obviously there's a tremendous honor with being the first black belt in Ireland, or if you're the first black belt in any country, it's a great honor. But it also means that you got into the sport of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu before really anyone. I mean, I can't imagine you would have had too many people going, "Oh, come down to the club with us." Everyone's doing, and there's all these black belts. What was that like? How did you get into it? And also, how did you bring the sport down to Ireland?
I told the story a few times, but very briefly, I saw UFC 1 on a Friday night. I just happened to get a hold of it, and I just thought this was the most fascinating thing I'd ever seen. I'd never seen anything like this. I figured that if two guys were fighting, it was punching and kicking. And then all of a sudden, everybody knows the story. We see this kind of skinny Brazilian taking people down and finishing them on the ground. Not a clue what was going on. That was Friday night. On Saturday mornings, I used to get a group of guys together, and we do some kickboxing and fitness training. Well, that Saturday instead, we lay on the ground and try to headlock each other. And that, from those very humble beginnings, that's where it all began. And it was just a case of trying to figure out moves and pause and rewind an old VHS tape and see what Heist Gracie was doing. Travel around. I was lucky early on to meet a very accomplished judo player in Ireland, Andy Ryan, who's now is also a BJJ black belt. Just kind of exchanging ideas, and a lot of techniques in judo are the same as BJJ anyway. It's basically controlling grappling on the ground. So it was a sort of a slower process. Like now, I'm a little bit envious of guys when they walk in. They have a bunch of brown and black belts coaching them from day one, and probably they're at a level in 6 months what took me 4 years to get to. But that's how it is when you're the first to do something. But I'm glad I went down the road I did as well. I'm kind of glad I had to kind of self-learn it and figure out as I went along, because there's something somewhat rewarding that if you have a puzzle and you're trying to solve it for weeks, possibly even months, and then suddenly the answer presents itself. It's a very rewarding, very rewarding thing to do. So yeah, it was a slower process, but I'm glad I did it.
Wow, VHS tapes. I don't think grapplers these days really know how lucky they are with YouTube and all the great DVDs out there. I mean, it's a really different landscape. But you touched on MMA in Ireland before. You mentioned there's like 90 clubs there now. We hear a lot of stories, but being in Australia, we haven't had a chance to speak to someone who's actually been a part of the current boom over there. Tell us, what do you attribute to the huge growth of the sport in your country? And how big is it in Ireland right now? What's it like on the streets? Is everybody into it? Is it one of the main sports in the country?
I would think at this stage it is, yeah. Even yesterday I was grocery shopping, and I asked one of the people there working, where's the onions? And they're like, oh, let me show you, John. It's over here. And I was like, okay, he knows my name. And, giving me them and saying, hey, best luck to you and Conor in Boston. So it still catches me by surprise. And I could be walking down the road and there's people driving by, beeping the horn and, good luck in Boston, shouting out the window. And so it definitely seems to be known by pretty much everybody. And certainly if you're walking down the road with Conor, you better be prepared to know how to use a camera phone on everybody's phone, because they're going to be stopping. You're the photographer if you're with him. So it's in the last year and a half, 2 years, it's gone from being maybe somewhat of a niche sport to being shown on our main TV channels here and getting mentions in the national news. So it's for me, it's when I remember a couple of years ago, if you saw someone wearing a tap-out shirt walking down the street, you probably knew who it was, because there were so few people involved in the sport. And now there's guys walking down the street wearing UFC clothing and these other brands that, are just fans. They're not even in a club. Maybe they just like watching it and like being part of it.
Yeah.
I imagine it's somewhat similar to Australia. Like it went from, I was a big fan of Elvis Sinovich back in the day, and I'm sure he kind of went through the same thing that Conor did. Like, he was probably the guy that introduced the sport to a lot of people and got a lot of people interested in it. And like the Aussies, I think Irish people, we like competition and we like fighting,
Yeah.
And so it's no mystery that it was going to take off and be big here. And unlike other sports, I think other sports are popular because they're popular almost by accident. Like their dad showed them. Like, no one in Australia, I'm guessing, really cares about baseball. I know in Ireland we don't care about baseball, whereas that's huge in America and other parts of the world, and maybe over in America nobody cares about rugby or about Aussie rules or about soccer, but it's big in the countries where it is. But no matter where you go, fighting is important, and the fact that UFC are able to take a sport that is globally important and interesting and then spend a couple of billion making it, making it a slick product and good marketing. It's no wonder that it's gotten this big.
Yeah, no, that's a very good theory and absolutely true. You mentioned Conor McGregor. I would say he's definitely a big part of the boom in MMA in Ireland. Tell us, when did you first start working with Conor, and what were your first impressions of him when he first came to the gym?
He's been with me now since he's 16 or 17. He's 27 now, so he's about 10 years, I guess, we're together. Yeah, I'm often asked that, and I'd like to be able to tell a cool story that he walked in and the ceiling split and thunder came and there was a lightning bolt and stuff, but really he was just another kid walking into the gym. He didn't really think anything different than anybody else. Pretty quickly it became obvious that he wanted to compete, so he was training a lot, and he's always been sort of loud and brash and funny and arrogant, and I was kind of always drawn to him. I just thought he was a funny kid. But yeah, at the beginning, like anybody else, he had decent striking. He'd come from boxing, but his grappling was, he was obviously just learning that aspect of mixed martial arts. So just like anybody else, we just struck up a relationship, and it's grown steadily over the years. And obviously now 10 years on, we're tight, and we've been through a lot together. So a lot of ups, but there was a lot of downs during that period as well, and we were able to get through it. And now here we are. It's a nice success story.
Sorry to cut in there, Dennis. I was just going to say, when you say there have been a lot of downs, what sort of downs were you talking about?
Oh, we're 10 years at it. The last year and a half, there's been money involved, but the first 8.5, there was none. He's basically on the breadline, and I'm trying to help him with that. And there's times where you're paying for meals, and you're bringing him away to do a fight in the UK. We're having to hustle and scrape together pennies so that we can afford to be there, and your basic living costs. I'm guessing it's the same in Australia. There's no government funding to help a young athlete that wants to fight professionally. If Conor had been a soccer player at Air Sport GAA, he would have got some funding from the government, but for his sport there was none. So you're on that. You're barely able to get by, and you're doing all this hard training, and we're in these cold, miserable facilities, and there's a bit of work involved in trying to keep someone motivated during those long winter nights to to get down to the gym and put in another hard round, even though there's no solid goal at the end. It's somewhat different from someone now. They can look to Conor and say, yeah, there is a career path here. But when he was starting off, there was no one to look to, and we didn't know if it was going to work out. I wasn't able to promise him anything. Hey, keep at it, and maybe you'll get there. Even when he started, the UFC was still quite small then. You're talking back before UFC 80s. No one was making big money back then, but we all kept our head down and we all kept doing it because our goal was and our passion was the sport. It wasn't to make money. It wasn't to get famous. It was to get better at fighting, to get better at martial arts. And luckily, coinciding with that, the sport blew up during that decade. And, like I said, here we are now. That investment has paid off.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy, John. Do you guys ever sort of reminisce back to those days, and look at what you are now and just, obviously think, wow, look how far we've come, and look at all the stuff that we've been through together, to get to this point and we're actually here. Do you guys ever sort of just sit around and do that?
Like last night, actually, we went out for dinner. Conor's last red meat meal last night. He stops taking red meat about this far out from the weigh-in, so we went out somewhere nice in Dublin and had a nice steak, and we're there with girlfriends. And it was nice to be able to, during downtime like that, just kind of reflect. Here we are again. We're getting ready to travel to Boston to headline another card that's getting a huge amount of attention. And we're remembering the times where he's out in his car park and me and him are trying to push his girlfriend's car to get it started because his old Peugeot 206 had crashed again and wouldn't start. And you're just kind of laughing at those times, and even times where I'm chasing Conor for his mat fees, and he was always the first on the mat, but then when it came to paying for that session, he was the first out the door as well. So it's all a bit of a giggle now, but yeah, it's a bit of fun during downtime like that to reflect. But certainly, we're in the gym. We're only ever worried about the present. What are we trying to accomplish with today's session, and to make today's session as profitable and as productive as possible.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with the show Entourage, but your story reminds me a lot of Entourage. Now,
I actually really enjoyed Entourage. I watched the first 1 or 2 seasons, then I kind of went off, but I thought it was a great show.
Yeah, man, it's our favorite. Now, speaking of Conor, we've only been able to see very little of what Conor is capable of doing in the octagon, and thus far it's been really impressive. However, the biggest criticism from MMA fans is that the UFC picking winnable fights for him, and that if he went up against a guy like, say, Chad Mendes or Dennis Bermudez or Frankie Edgars of the division, he would lose because of their wrestling. As Conor's coach, can you tell us how good is his grappling, and how would he do against the quote-unquote wrestlers in the division?
Well, the great thing is that we're going to see that. There's for sure he's going to be facing all these guys as time progresses, and I've no doubt the result will be the same. But of course, I'm going to say that, and Conor's going to say it, and then the fans will have their opinion, and that's great. It creates drama, it creates interest in the sport. But to think that we're not working on those aspects, and when the fans see the likes of Carl Pendred and the grappling pressure he can bring to a fight. And when you see Gunnar Nelson and how slick he is on the ground, and the fact that Conor's with them every day on the mat, I would ask them to just apply a little bit of logic to it and think, well, what do you think we're doing every day? Of course we're preparing for all types of opponent. But like I said, if you look at someone like a great champion like Jon Jones, he's faced every style of fighter, and he tends to not only beat them, but he tends to beat them within their own style. And yet, soon as the fight's over, people are thinking, well, he's not that good, and what if he faces this guy? What if he faces that guy? And that's great. That's what entertainment is supposed to be about. It would actually be worse if everybody just said, oh, well, I guess he's unbeatable. I don't want to see him anymore. So I'm glad that there's questions, and I look forward to answering them over the coming years.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just speaking in terms of, like, wrestling and the actual, I guess, mechanics behind it, we read an article a while back where it noted that fighters such as Conor McGregor are defending takedowns by cutting angles rather than using the traditional sprawl. Kind of like if you can get out of the way of a punch, similarly, you can get out of the way of a takedown. Would you agree that this is something, somewhat the next evolution of MMA and what's happening?
A little bit. I do think it's even more down to the fact that there's striking involved. Let's use Aldo as an example. He's continuously showed how good he is against if you want to say the grappler. And it's because his striking is so effective that he gets people shooting from the other side of the octagon. Whereas if you look at, say, traditional freestyle wrestling, they tend to be in a tie-up, and then the athletes will do something to clear the arms and then shoot in. In other words, they're shooting from less than a meter. But in MMA, they're trying to shoot from 3 meters out because they're so nervous of the strikes. So I think that's what's made a big difference to the wrestler, is that they have to be able to get into a range where they're nose to nose with somebody and then shoot. And then it's like a freestyle wrestling match. But if you have such good kicks and such good punches that you have someone shooting from the outside of kicking range, it's a lot easier to deal with the shot, and it's a lot easier to deal to sprawl on them than it is if they're already got hands on you and they're in an environment that they're more comfortable with that kind of high school wrestling, freestyle wrestling, Olympic wrestling range. You'll never see a freestyle wrestler shooting in a wrestling match from outside kicking range. He's always in where he's hand fighting. He's at that range. You know, it's close. But if you're very nervous of striking, your wrestling is pretty much useless because you have to shoot from the outside.
Yeah, unless you're fighting James Toney, that's not going to work. Now, you know, let's discuss this upcoming fight with veteran Dennis Seaver. And actually, just a little funny story for all the listeners. When we first called up and Casper said, my co-host Dennis is on the line, you said, not Dennis Seaver. Is Dennis Seaver on the line? We all had a bit of a laugh about that. And I almost wanted to put on a Dennis Seaver accent for you just to play along with the joke.
999.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, he's a part Russian and he's a part German, and there's a part of Russian in me, so I thought I'd get onto you with that. But, you know,
give it a go.
Give it a go. But, you know, seriously speaking about it, you know, Conor has said that he plans on beating Dennis in 2 minutes. You know, do you believe that prediction is accurate? Do you think that fight is going to be that easy for Conor?
But being honest, no. I think it'll be under a minute.
Wow. What makes you say that? I'm assuming you guys have studied tape, you know, whipped out the old VHSs and looked at Dennis's style. What makes you say that?
I just think he has. I don't think he has a great skill set for Conor because he's a short kickboxer. You know, he tends to rely on his striking a lot. And to try to fight Conor in the kickboxing range, where you're giving up a half a meter of range, is very, very difficult to do. You know, if you look at the Poirier fight with Conor, after the first 1 or 2 exchanges, Poirier was in survival mode. He was backing off, just trying to get through the first round, and it's because, and it's no secret, I've said it in all my interviews, when people get hit by Conor the first time, it's very different, and you can talk about it and you can try and prepare in the gym for it, but I see it in them in every fight, and you can watch it yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. When that first shot lands, the eyes widen a little bit more, and I know in their head they're going, what the hell have I signed up for? Because they don't spar light heavyweights in their gym, so they're not used to taking a light heavyweight shot. But that's how Conor hits. And I believe Dennis, his better years, I think, are behind him, and he's been in some wars, so he's not able to take the shots maybe he once was able to. And, you know, Swanson, in their fight, he landed some good shots in the third round and had them all over the place. But it's not going to take Conor that long. And he'll connect early, hard, and Seaver's not going to be able to take that.
Wow. In terms of Dennis Seaver, you know, analyzing his style, where do you think he ranks in terms of, you know, difficulty compared to Conor's past opponents?
Well, he definitely has certain positive attributes. You know, he looks immensely strong. I imagine when people have been in the clinch with him, it's not fun if he wants to try to squeeze you and dull you around. He looks a very powerful man. But like I said, he's got this kind of flicky lead roundhouse kick, and he doesn't really close distance all that well. He's a little bit slow, so he can't really involve his hands. But yeah, if you want to step into the pocket and trade with him, that's going to be dangerous. But that's dangerous with any fighter. You know, any fighter can land a hard shot and put you down. But I do believe that like Poirier was a little bit more well-rounded and a bit rangier with his shots, so a little bit more difficult to close in on. But Seaver, I think he's going to look. All his shots are going to land short. And then when the first couple of shots from Conor land, you'll see him backing off trying to survive. He'll end up with his back on the fence pretty quickly. Conor will get him reacting, freezing, doubting himself. He'll make a mistake and he'll go to sleep.
Wow, what a prediction. And, John, it sounds like, just like a lot of the fans, they were a little bit surprised when they found Dennis would be fighting Conor next because he had such an impressive performance against Dustin. Was he a fight that you guys wanted next? Or did you want to fight somebody else in the division rather than Dennis? Was it just something the UFC presented to you guys?
Yeah, I would have loved it to be Aldo, if I'm being honest. But these are the guys that map out what direction they want certain athletes to go in, and this was the next opponent, and then it's Aldo. So whoever it was, it didn't make a difference. He fought Brandao, who was the wild striker that also had world-class jiu-jitsu, and he was going to show Conor what's up, and well, we saw what happened, and then he went in against the number 5 Poirier, who was the first top 5 American fighter who had been in there with them all and was going to show Conor what's up, and we saw what happened there. And I just can't see what name it would have made a difference. If I had it been, if you look at the likes of Swanson and Poirier and Edgar, they've all fought each other, and Swanson and Poirier went the distance, and Swanson and Edgar went the distance, and I put all those guys in a similar. Actually, no, I'm saying that wrong. I made Edgar finish Swanson right at the end. I got that right? Well, regardless, they all look like a similar level of opponent. Conor at this stage is not even really playing the same sport, I don't believe.
Wow. Well, obviously you said that you wanted Aldo next. Dana White has said that if Conor beats Dennis Siver, and you're very confident that he will be getting Jose Aldo next. Let's talk game plans. Many have tried. No one else has been able to succeed. Where do you believe Conor's advantages lie over Jose Aldo, and how would you see Conor winning it?
Yeah. I believe Aldo has faced guys who are accomplished grapplers that were learning striking. And he's looked well. He's looked good against those. But he has had that intimidation factor, the big leg kicks and the fast hands, and he kind of gets people on the back foot, and their skill level goes down when they're shooting from the other side of the octagon. But now he's going to fight someone who is going to, I believe, not only match him, but supersede him in the striking area, and he's going to feel what it's like to be on the back foot and what it's like to feel intimidated in that range. And I believe he'll turn Aldo into a grappler pretty quickly, and I can see him being the one trying to take Conor down. And I think that's where that's going to be his first experience of that. It's going to be a major difference in anything he's faced before.
John, a lot of people say a lot of negative things about Jose Aldo, but, he is really one of the best pound-for-pound fighters of all time. I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on Aldo as a fighter? What are your and Conor's thoughts about Aldo? Do you believe he is one of the all-time greats in the division? What are your thoughts on him?
Well, I can obviously only answer for myself, but my thoughts on it would be that he's a fantastic fighter. Let's look at the evidence. Am I right in saying he's the only ever UFC featherweight champion?
Correct. Yeah.
I'm not too good at stats, but I believe he is.
He is.
And then if you look at his run in the WEC as well, I mean, that's not by accident. He might win one or two, and people could argue that you've been lucky, but he's beaten everybody. He's beaten literally everybody that's been put in front of him. I do think a little bit he's been facing a similar opponent in a lot of his fights, and they're kind of undersized grapplers that are learning striking. So I'm curious to see how he does against somebody, like I said, who can match him skill-wise and speed-wise and strength-wise in the striking, and let's see how he holds up. But just based on what he's done so far, you'd be nuts to say he wasn't a great fighter and someone that has shown a very high level of skill in all ranges of mixed martial arts. He's from a great team. I was actually a huge fan of his coach when he was fighting back in the Pride days and the shows that he was on under Pendonera. So yeah, you can do nothing at the moment but bow your head to his fantastic performances to date. Now that's not to say that I don't think Conor will beat him when they meet.
Now, John, we told the fans that you were coming on the show, and they sent in some fan questions. We just got a couple for you. McGregor fan 1 wants to know, if the title fight between Conor and Aldo doesn't happen in a huge stadium show in Ireland, and to be honest, that would be hard to imagine, would you be comfortable with Conor fighting Jose in Brazil for the title?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw this video that they did when Conor visited Brazil. and they put him on a stage and basically had a couple of thousand people just
the Q&A.
give him abuse. And you can see Conor's reaction. It was smiling, laughing. He thrives in this. Of course, the Dublin show will be fantastic, very historic to do it here in Ireland. But I think a little bit unlike Aldo, rather than be affected by negativity from a crowd, he rises to that occasion and he loves it. So I've no doubt we will do a fight in Brazil at some stage. Brazil is a hotbed for producing great fighters, and they also are a bit like the Irish fans. They're incredibly passionate for their own fighters. So and that's something we kind of grew up with in here. Like when Conor was kind of coming through the early stages, we were always having to travel to the UK and travel around Europe to find big fights. You know, they weren't in Ireland back then; they were around Europe, and we were always the visiting fighter. We were always the one getting booed and heckled, and you know, at the end of the day, it's you and one guy plus a referee in a cage, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, we're having a huge stadium show here in Melbourne in November. I think you guys might have heard about it. Love to have Conor down here, but obviously, you know, I think you guys deserve to have him fight in Ireland first. Now, we've got the last fan question we're going to ask you is from the real McCoy, and I think he's sort of asking this question for down the line, but he's wondering if Conor is successful in the featherweight division and cleans it out, much like Jon Jones, could you see him dropping down a bantamweight to challenging guys like TJ Dillashaw for the belt and be a 2-division champion?
100% no. He's going to go up a division, and that's a certainty. He will go up to lightweight, and people say I'm nuts when I say this, but I could actually see him taking out the welterweight division as well. But right now, the featherweight belt is the goal, and then the lightweight belt, and then we'll see how he's going. But bantamweight, I'd have to saw off at least one of his legs, possibly two.
Now, John, before we let you go, we want to do something with you that we do with all our guests. It's called the Submission Radio Tap Out Round. It's world famous. But that would mean it's not world famous, but it is a bunch of fun. We fire off a bunch of fun questions at you, and you answer with the first thing that comes to your mind, kind of like word association. Are you ready?
Yeah, this makes me nervous, but go ahead.
Then that's all right. Nice and easy. All right. What's the most enjoyable thing about being a coach for all these years?
Seeing people progress and fulfill their dreams.
Now, with this big MMA boom, has Steven Seagal volunteered to come down to the gym and show you or any of your fighters some of his secret techniques yet?
It would be an honor to have him here, but I wouldn't mind having him around with Steven Seagal.
Oh, really? The deadly stuff. Now,
I want to learn the deadly stuff.
Yeah. Give us a couple of your highlights so far in your coaching career, John.
UFC Dublin has to be top of the list. You know, we broke a bunch of records that night, and I kind of say on that night, it was when I went to my parents and I was like, I told you this was going to be something when you were giving out to me 12 years ago for stopping an engineering degree, an engineering profession. I think I'm a degree, but so that was a nice pinnacle. But there's been so many other instances over the years where, you know, it's just a guy coming in off the street and learning jiu-jitsu for the first time and losing a bit of weight and gaining some confidence. They're not in the headlines. They're not in the media. People don't know about them, but it's those consistent emails I get from people saying that it's made a significant impact on their life and improved the quality of their life. They're actually the ones that make me the happiest.
Wow. And, you know, John, we want you to finish this sentence. People don't know that I...
a Spider-Man comic nerd.
Oh, wow. Not Batman, Spider-Man. Why is this, John? What's going on?
Come on, Spider-Man. Don't even get me started on Marvel versus DC.
You're a martial artist. Batman is a martial artist. Spider-Man has web coming out of his hands.
He learns nonsense martial arts. What are you, like Krav Maga or something like that? I'd give him somewhat respect if he was like an MMA or a jiu-jitsu expert. But Spidey, he uses his senses, and I like how he's not really getting involved in battles. He's using his brain more. And I'm a big Spider fan as well. I've collected tarantulas since I was 12 years of age. So I'm a arachnophile, not arachnophobe.
We're more arachnophobes, so there you go. Now, John, do you believe Aisling Daly was underestimated, being picked last, and a bit misunderstood by coaches on Team Pettis in Tough?
I have to say it's Aisling Daly, like a tree, like an ash.
Oh, Aisling.
So Aisling Daly. It's just the pronunciation in Irish. Well, I thought it was very silly of them. I know she was very honest and upfront about her dealing with depression, and I can only think that that's what put them off. But they obviously don't know her because she's so tough and resilient. And just looking at the numbers, like to pick someone who's 2-1 ahead of someone who's 14-2 or whatever she was at the time is, in my opinion, as a coach, just not all that bright, not all that clever to do. And she had a good run in the house, but the house definitely didn't suit her. She's just not that type of personality. And also, she's a big weight cutter, so to try and make that weight a couple of times, a couple of weeks in a row, it's just impossible for her to do. We had a hiccup in the lead up to the last fight. There was some stuff that happened outside, but I don't like offering excuses, and I know Ash wouldn't appreciate me bringing it up and try to offer an excuse. But, we hold her hands up. She missed about 2 pounds, but she went in and she had a good performance nonetheless. But I can guarantee you her next fight, she'll hit that championship 115 weight and will look fantastic at it. And she's that's another, her and Paddy Houlihan, because of the divisions they're in, they're 1 or 2 solid wins away from a title fight as well. So the chase is on at SBG to see who's going to get that belt first.
Absolutely. And even though she beat our very own Australian, we're very excited to see what Dahlia has to offer in the division. Now, what would
the two of them are good friends as well. Ash told me a lot of stories about that girl, and she was a big fan of her. And both the girls were not exactly over the moon when the match was announced because they were such close friends in the house. But, at the end of the day, that's the sport. And you go in, you fight hard, and at the end, you buy them a beer.
That's right. I'll put some shrimp on the
bar.
That's my
impression of an Aussie there.
That's it. Now, John, tell us, what's the best advice you've ever received from a coach?
I can give you that easily. The best advice I ever got was from my coach, Matt Thornton, and he said, never ask somebody, do they want to fight? Have them approach you. And that has stood me well for over a decade.
Very good. That's something you can take to the bank.
It seems very simple, but it's very tempting when you're a coach and you see somebody showing some ability on the mat, and you go up and say, hey, you want to fight MMA? There's a fight coming up. Do you want to have a go of it? And right away, you've messed it all up right from day one, because maybe they say yeah now for the wrong reasons. Maybe they want to try to please you. But if you make it difficult for them to get their first fight and they have to chase you for it, well, they're mentally in the right place. And then you have the easy side, and that's teaching them how to fight.
It's very smart. Lock, stock, or snatch?
Snatch.
Wow, that's probably the biggest statement you made in the interview.
You like who, sorry?
I like the character Mickey in it. Someone reminds me of Connor a little bit.
Brad Pitt. Do you like dogs, right?
Yeah. I'm not a very fast.
Okay, now, John, what's an underutilized technique in MMA? What's one technique that you believe is underutilized?
That's an interesting question. I think the kicking game is still very undeveloped in general in mixed martial arts. Connor throws a lead leg hook kick and the interviewers are going crazy, whereas for me, this is just, would you go crazy if someone was to throw a hook punch? No. So I believe the kicking game in MMA is something that over the last few months has begun to develop in some fighters. I think Connor's one of the best, if not the best, at it at the moment. But I can see that continue to grow rather than just the low kick, the Thai boxing big round kick and low kick. Well, now we're starting to see the turning kicks and the lead leg hook kicks and, people expanding their vocabulary with their legs.
And finally, John, last question. You basically spoke about it before, but the official prediction. What's your official prediction? How is McGregor beating Steve on January 18th?
I see clean knockout, certainly within the first 2 minutes.
Well, you can't argue with that, guys. Make sure you check out the fight. And, guys, if you're traveling to Ireland, make sure you stop by this mega gym, John's Gym. Go to www.sbgisland.com. Check out where it is and make sure you drop by. And also follow John on Twitter. He puts up a lot of good photos. It looked like he was doing a bit of rolling on New Year's Eve or just as New Year's was happening. So a lot of respect to John for that. You can follow him at JOH_KAVANAGH. John, thank you so much for coming on to the show.
You mind if I give a quick shout-out before we go?
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I want to give a quick shout-out to an Aussie friend of mine, Ben Power. I'd actually accredit him to teaching me most of my jiu-jitsu in the early days. Back when I had only started, he was a solid purple belt. He trained with Elvis and those guys. And he was in Ireland for quite a while. And we became very close friends. And he was one of my earliest technical instructors in jiu-jitsu and put me, I still teach a lot of the techniques he taught me back then over 10 years ago. And just wondering as well, one of my best friends, Rob Byrne, who's been living in Sydney now for I think he's there over 7 years now, married over there to Emer. So just a quick hello to those guys, and I hope they're doing well.
Awesome. Well, big shout outs to Ben and Rob. Again, John, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for the invite.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Smooth Benson Henderson. You listen to Submission Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next guest is a legend in MMA. He's a multiple champion in the UFC and a star in Hollywood. We have none other than the natural Randy Couture, and he's back on Submission Radio. Randy, happy 2015 and welcome to Submission Radio.
Thanks. Good to be on. How y'all doing?
We're doing really well. It's the kickoff to the year, and, we're happy to have you back on the show. Now, kicking off the interview, how did you see in 2015? Because we had a look at your Twitter, and you had what looked like a very fun night.
I had a great night. Yeah, it was one of my good friends is a country music singer, and he was performing at Treasure Island at Gillies, and it's the second year in a row I've gotten to spend New Year's watching him perform. It was awesome.
Very nice. Now, Randy, a lot of fans in Australia may not know, but you have a movie out called Stretch, which is a great cast and is a lot of fun. Tell us a little bit about that and the movie and your experience shooting it.
Well, Joe Carnahan was the director for the movie. Obviously, he's done a lot of really cool things. Movies like Grey with Liam Neeson, and he had a great cast for Stretch. It's kind of a dark comedy. Patrick Wilson did a great job. It had just a ton of fun and funny characters. Chris Pine, and I had a blast on the movie. I played kind of a very incognito Russian limo driver. There was probably a lot of people that won't even recognize me in the movie, but it's the first time I've ever had to smoke a cigarette in a part. And I had 4 days on that movie, and I literally thought I was going to die by the end of the fourth day. It was horrible. But I was like, well, you guys are going to have to pay me a lot more money to ever smoke another cigarette in my life.
Wow. And was this like an actual real cigarette? It wasn't like prop or make-believe or anything?
No, it wasn't prop or nothing. I wish it was, but it wasn't. And I don't know how anybody does that, to be honest. It damn near killed me.
And now, Randy, another movie we're excited to see you in is Cameron and Eddie Lose the Belt. We haven't been able to see too much information about the plot, but, can you give us a little teaser about what we can expect from this one?
Well, I'm very excited that I don't get the chance to step outside the box very often and do some comedy. And this is definitely going to be a kind of a buddy comedy. A very good friend of mine who's been writing and doing stuff in the industry for years is going to direct the film and has written the film. He writes for Will Smith and Kevin James, and this is his first opportunity to kind of have his own project and have his control of his own destiny, so to speak. Mike Socio is going to write it and direct it. I play a very kind of eccentric, some might say crazy, cage fighter who's germaphobe, among other things. He hears some voices in his head. He lends his humble abode, his mansion, if you will, to his cousin and his cousin's buddy for the weekend. He's going to do a commercial TV shoot, and they're in town for a Comic-Con type event to promote their comic book. That's their dream. And he, of course, has very strict rules about how to take care of his house and what not to touch and what clothes not to go to the bathroom in, and so on and so forth. And of course, his prized possession is his belt, which is in a camera-monitored trophy case in his house. And of course, the first thing they promptly do is throw a huge party, and the belt goes missing.
Wow.
So these guys have to figure out where the belt went and get it back before I come back after the weekend to my house and find that it's gone and kill them both.
Now, I'm wondering, what your preparation was like for this movie, and is there any similarities? Are you by any chance a germaphobe, and do you have your title belts in, like, camera-monitored rooms?
No similarities whatsoever, which is one of the wonderful things about getting to act, is you get to do and say and be things that you would never be in real life. It's always kind of fun to play the bad guy, to get to do a bunch of nasty stuff and be the bad guy in films. But in this particular instance, I get to be a very eccentric, kind of almost crazy cage fighter. Obviously, the cage fighting thing I think I can handle, but the other stuff is going to be a lot of fun to portray and to tap into and find. I am very particular. I'm one of those guys that is meticulous about where things go, and I think that comes from my 6 years in the Army. Everything kind of has its place, but I don't think, not to the extent of being obsessive compulsive about it, but just particular about it.
Absolutely. And, speaking of the belts there, you'd have a whole bunch of them. Just wondering, where do you keep all your title belts? Is there like a special room where you keep them, or is there like a secret door underneath the house with like a special eye-coded thing that scans your face, and then there's like a security card, but then Roy, and you say hi Roy every day?
There's a retina scan to get into there. Yeah, no, they're in my loft. I do have a trophy case for those. They sit in my loft in my office space in my house. No cameras, but they do have their own set of light switches to light them up. But that's about as far as it goes there.
Now, I want to ask you, we've got a few MMA-related questions. Before we delve into that, I want to ask you, because a lot of photos surfaced of you dressed, I believe, for Halloween as Chuck Liddell. And at first, I thought, oh, was this like something that you bought at the store? And I looked at the shorts. I'm like, those look pretty genuine, like Chuck Liddell shorts. I'm wondering what happened. Did you guys have, another fight behind the scenes that we weren't aware of?
Well, for years, since Ultimate Fighter 1, Chuck and I have, we've always been friends and always gotten along. But since being on that first season of The Ultimate Fighter, I get called or asked, hey, Chuck, and he gets, hey, Randy, because they associate us with the show. Oh, big fan, can I have an autograph? And I'm like, I'm not Chuck, I'm Randy. Oh, sorry, man. And we both have gotten that in various places for years. And so I jokingly said, I ought to just shave a mohawk in my head and play Chuck Liddell for Halloween this Halloween. And I was sitting with Jay Glazier at the time, and he's like, man, let's do that. He called Chuck on the phone, and Chuck said, yeah, I got shorts and gloves. He gave me the shorts and the gloves. And I went out, my girlfriend, Mindy, found a hair piece that we could basically toupee tape on my head to form the mohawk, and voila, we have Chuck Liddell. And it was really funny because then all the media and the TMZ guys, they weren't sure what to call me when I showed up in the Chuck Liddell outfit. They're like, Randy, Chuck, and they weren't sure what to say. It was pretty funny.
And I think you're setting a bit of a standard now. Everybody's excited to find out which fighter you're going to dress as next Halloween. Don't want to break the news for anyone, but are you going to go down that road? Are you still going to be a fighter, or are you going to go outside the box for next one?
Maybe James Toney.
I don't know. Yeah. It'll be I'm sure it'll be something spontaneous like it was this year. I doubt that it'll be another fighter.
Now, Randy, speaking of other fighters, there's a gentleman at the moment who is receiving some comparisons to yourself, mainly because he's delving into MMA a little bit later on in life. And his name is CM Punk. I'm just wondering, I'm assuming you would have heard CM Punk is now in the UFC, and he basically comes in with like almost zero experience. You obviously had your wrestling background, your boxing background from the Army. I'm just wondering, what do you think of CM Punk in the UFC? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I don't really know anything about CM Punk. I don't know anything about his athletic background. I don't really watch any of the pro wrestling. Not that would translate, other than the fan base that he probably brings over if they put him in a fight in a pay-per-view. And I'm sure that's the drive behind signing him to a contract is not unlike Brock Lesnar. He brings in a ton of fans from the WWE world. Unlike Brock, I was aware of Brock's athletic background as a collegiate wrestler, and he had some athletic skill to back up being brought in and tossed right in the mix. So I can't really weigh in on what to expect from CM. I guess we'll see. We'll see who they match him up with, and we'll see how he fares and see what kind of skills he brings to the table. I've never seen him in a training environment or or anything like that. So it's really hard for me to estimate what his abilities are going to be. I think if they throw him in at the top of the food chain, it's probably going to be a pretty short run for him. If they take care of him and try to take advantage of the fan base that he brings from pro wrestling, then he'll probably get some fairly, a little easier opponents and get a chance to get his feet wet and see where he's at.
I think, yeah, well, what Dana White's basically said, it's going to be a different story to Brock Lesnar, where Brock obviously got, former champions like yourself and Frank Mir, and even Heath Herring. With CM Punk, it's going to be like 0-1 and, low record guys. But I guess the big thing is he's 36, he's coming into MMA, and all he has a background in is a bit of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, not like, obviously Hoist Gracie or anyone like that. I guess from your opinion, how hard do you think it is for a person, whether it's him or anyone, to come into MMA at 36 not having, a background in the sport?
Well, I don't know that the age is really a factor. I think he's obviously a reasonably good athlete to be doing what he's been doing. People can say all they want about the pro wrestlers, but those guys are still very physically fit and very good athletes. It may be a show and it may be predetermined outcomes, but it's still an athletic, physical endeavor, what they do. So I don't really have an issue or think that his age is going to be a huge factor. His athletic background certainly is going to determine how quickly he gets up to speed in all the areas of MMA. Obviously, we know that jiu-jitsu alone isn't going to carry you very far. You need to have the other tools in the tool belt, or somebody's going to point it out to you, and it's not very much fun.
Absolutely right, Randy. Or you have to find the fountain of youth, which obviously you have because you look a lot younger than us and we're about 20 years younger than you. So, Randy, just touching on another issue that we spoke about last time when you were on the program, and that's an MMA union. The big news over the last month has been the lawsuit that the fighters are taking against the UFC. Just wondering, what did you think when you heard the news? Did you think it was something positive?
Well, obviously I was approached. I've known about the swell of the class action suit coming for 8 or 9 months and was approached about being involved, and haven't decided one way or the other whether I'm going to throw my name in that hat. I suspect at this point I'm probably not going to. Obviously, I've had my run-ins and my fights with Zuffa since they bought the company over ancillary rights and a lot of the things that are on the table with the class action suit. And I applaud Kung Lee and Nate Corey and John Fitch for being willing to stand up, take the heat, and put themselves on the line for the rights of the fighters that in a lot of cases are getting the raw end, the short end of the stick with regard to the contracts and the way business is being done with the industry leader and promotion in the sport right now, and that's the UFC and Zuffa. So I wasn't surprised. I knew it was coming. I know it's going to be a long, drawn-out process. I think 2015, for a whole bunch of reasons, is going to be a pretty interesting year in mixed martial arts to see what comes of the sport and how the sport adjusts and settles out. I think we've been going through some growing pains, largely because of Zuffa and the UFC and the way that business has been done. It's obviously a global sport now, all over the world, and it's in some ways the market is a little oversaturated. It seems to have lost some of its shine and that special luster that it had back in the day when there was only 6 or 8 pay-per-views a year. I think that the door has been cracked open a little bit by all of these things to allow some of the other promotions like Bellator or World Series of Fighting to grow their brand and to fill that void and to promote and allow a bunch of other fighters to make a living and apply their wares and get sponsors and do a lot of things in the sport of mixed martial arts. So I think it's going to be a really interesting year.
And you mentioning cracking the door open. Do you think this could be an embryonic stage of fighters realizing they can sort of stand up for some of the issues and possibly an MMA union being put together in the future now that fighters are sort of seeing that other fighters are standing up for certain issues and sort of taking it to certain promotions?
Well, the union word's been thrown around a lot. For 6 or 8 years in the sport, I've been approached by many different people about organizing the fighters and a union and all those things. And I think that certainly that is a possibility, and precedents will be set if the class action suit in the next 2 or 3 years is successful. Procedures and things that are being done now are going to have to change. The contracts will be altered, and they won't be so restricting, and it will create an opportunity where the fighters can come together and create a guild or something like that, garner health insurance, 401k type things, so some of those things that are united for base pay for certain levels of fighting, all those sorts of things that are kind of the issues right now. That potential is all there through the class action suit and the guys that are standing up.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting and to see, obviously, how the lawsuit goes and how it affects MMA in general. Now, the UFC recently, they scrapped the out-of-competition testing in MMA, and the MMA world was shocked when it announced that one of the pound-for-pound best fighters in the world, Jon Jones, tested positive for cocaine out of competition. What did you think when you heard that, especially after the very impressive performance that he put on against Daniel Cormier just over the weekend?
Well, it certainly raises some questions. I'm very familiar with drug testing protocol coming out of the Olympic wrestling that I was akin to, and the out of competition substance list and the in competition substance list is considerably different. I see now that there was a second test done pre-competition that came up negative. That was in the newspaper today, so I'm not sure how accurate that is, but it certainly raises the question. If that second test is true, then I think the commission was doing what they needed to do to make sure that going into that fight on fight night, he was clean. He didn't put himself or Daniel Cormier in any danger. If that second test never happened, then it raises the question what the athletic commission was thinking in allowing a guy that just failed a drug test to continue to compete, and no public statement was made about that failed test. But I understand the difference between an in-competition fight night drug test, and it'd be interesting to see what those test results were when they come back from John's fight night test versus the one he did on December 3rd that was an out-of-competition test. Obviously, still, people want to understand that line. What in competition is the night of the fight. Anything in training camp or before that, or the random tests that happen during the year, those are out of competition. Yes, he's in training camp for that fight, but it's still considered out of competition. He's not competing until fight night. So there's a very fine line there, and those lists vary in what are banned substances and what are not. Regardless, cocaine is an illegal substance, whether it's performance enhancing or not. So it raises a whole bunch of other questions about John, and obviously he's volunteered to put himself into rehab, which, good for him. I hope that goes well for him. It's a shame that the reputation and the ability that he brings to the cage is a little bit tarnished now because of this. But it is what it is. He's the one that has to look himself in the mirror and deal with that. It'll be interesting to see what his fight night drug test comes back, if it comes back clean. If it doesn't come back clean, then obviously the commission has no choice but to pursue sanctions against him. Will they go easy on him because he's subjected himself to rehab? That's a question we'll see, I guess, when the results come back.
Yeah, I think what I find interesting about this one is obviously Vanderlei Silva was tested, I guess you could say, out of competition, and he tested positive for I can't remember what he tested positive basically. Now Jon Jones, similar situation. They say out of competition, he tested positive for cocaine, but is not on the banned substances list. So I mean, I'm of the opinion that what Jon does in his own life is sort of his private thing. But I guess one of the biggest questions surrounding it is obviously, is cocaine a performance enhancing drug? And the general consensus is no. So do you think it's as bad as, say, taking a steroid or something along those lines?
Well, obviously, whether or not it's performance enhancing is another definition and thing that needs to be understood. But let's make it clear: we're in a combative sport where pain and getting hit and all those certain things and being able to endure those better are a factor in fights. That's why it is a banned substance on fight night, because if he's numbed up and in a different state of mind from cocaine to handle the pain and everything that we go through as fighters, then he's enhancing his performance. Now, is that the case, and is that what was going on during training camp? Did he have, issues, injuries, and things that were going on that he was trying to alleviate some of that pain and endure that to get through camp? I don't know those answers, but that's the kind of the distinguishing thing between in competition and out of competition, and what you can do in your training and in your regular life versus what you can do on fight night. And so in some ways, cocaine or those types of drugs that have that numbing effect are banned in competition.
Speaking of fight night, he had a very, very impressive performance against Daniel Cormier. We spoke about your predictions for the fight sort of leading into it last time you were on the show. What did you think of the fight? Because it was a real barn burner and a lot of people really, really enjoyed the fight. What did you think of it?
I liked the fight. I thought it was a good fight. I thought John did a great job of shutting down Daniel's wrestling. I thought Daniel could have implemented his wrestling, or at least attempted and faked and created the illusion that he was going to try to wrestle John more, which would have set up some of his effective striking better. But overall, I thought it was an entertaining fight, and both guys competed well. Obviously, I thought that Cormier was going to do, I've never seen anybody throw Dan Henderson around like Daniel did. And obviously there's a size difference between Dan and John, but, Daniel Cormier is an amazing wrestler, and I thought that would be the difference in the fight. But John did a great job of mitigating that difference in ability in wrestling and keeping the fight where he needed to keep it to control the fight. I had it 4-1 for John. So, overall, it was a good fight. I had 3 guys fighting on the card that night, so I definitely tuned in to watch, Brad Tavares and Evan Dunham and Josh Berkman compete, and they all did stellar jobs in their competitions. So it was a good night.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Randy, I've got some fun questions for you. The Submission Radio Tap Out round. A bunch of fun questions, and you answer with the first thing that comes to mind, like word association. Are you ready?
Yeah, let it rip.
All right. As an experienced dancer from Dancing with the Stars, did you see Ben Rothwell's victory dance against Overeem? And what score would you give it out of 5 if you were a judge?
Well, I think it lacks substance as a pasodoblus and therefore probably a 1.
Oh, wow.
Now, Randy, can you give us any insight about when Ryan's going to be fighting next? Because it's been a little while and we're excited to see him back in the cage.
Ryan got married in October. We tried to get him on the January card, but it was already full. He is signed to fight on the 27th of March in Thackerville, Oklahoma, on the Bellator that night. So you will see him again on Spike TV on the 27th of March. And I cannot remember his opponent's name right now.
That's all right. Well, we'll be watching, and congratulations to Ryan. Now, we've mentioned Steven Seagal in the past with you. Sensei Steven Seagal showed Daniel Cormier some secret, never-before-seen techniques going to this fight with Jon Jones. Seagal said that each one of these techniques alone could finish the fight, yet DC didn't use any of them during the fight. Did you think that DC was too scared to unleash the true powers that Steven Seagal taught him?
Shoot, I mean, I don't know why Daniel didn't try that front kick. That seemed to work.
Yeah.
Now, Randy, give us your New Year's Eve resolutions for 2015. Give us 1 or 2.
Oh, man. I really didn't make any resolutions. I have never really had or felt the need to make a resolution. I'm excited about developing Cameron and Eddie and being, not only being an actor, but getting involved in the producing side of things. We're developing a television series as well on that side of things that will definitely make a splash in the wrestling and MMA world. But it's too early to talk about that yet. But I really didn't make any resolutions. I pinch myself on a regular basis that I get to live this life and do the things I get to do and meet the people I get to meet. And I'm just happy. It's that simple.
I think when life is going well, you don't really have the need for resolutions. You kind of like keep doing what you're doing and everything will be good. Now, Randy, Gym Rescue was an awesome show. When is it coming, or is it coming back anytime soon?
Unfortunately, no. Viacom and Spike TV decided to not do any subsequent seasons of Gym Rescue or Fight Master. So, they especially the Gym Rescue show, it got good ratings. It was their number one show on that Sunday nights that it aired. But, networks are consistently trying to change their image a little bit, and I think Spike is trying to do a little more original programming and scripted type shows, develop, some of those type of shows like a Breaking Bad or something like that. And they have strong contenders in the reality space with Bar Rescue and Ink Master. So to throw another show like Gym Rescue on the reality lineup for them, I think it just didn't make sense, even as successful as it was.
Now, Randy, Sylvester Stallone at the premiere of Expendables 3 said that if a fourth movie happens, it will definitely be R-rated. This got us thinking that your character, Tolroyd, might be getting a love interest. So if you could choose one actress to reprise such a role, who would you choose?
Oh, gosh, easy. Charlize Theron.
Nice.
Why? Why Charlize?
I just think she's amazingly talented. She's certainly not hard to look at. I've respected her work for a long, long time. With like The Italian Job and some of the other stuff that's on the edge of action, she's done some of that. I think she'd be amazing.
Yeah, she was amazing in Monster. That was crazy to realize it was even her. Now, fans in this part of the world may not know, you have your own cologne, Extreme Couture, which is great. Fans need to check it out. Did you ever think that your name would be on a cologne bottle?
No, but I've found my name in a whole bunch of places I never thought it would be.
Like what?
Well, on the front of a building, at a gym, on T-shirts, with the clothing line. Certainly the cologne is an extension of kind of the fashion and clothing line, and I'm really happy with how it came out. It took me a year to kind of develop the cologne, the scent that we came out with, and everybody jokingly says, "Oh, does it smell like your gym?" I'm like, no, it kind of counters that. If you come out of my gym smelling like that, you need to spray some of that on.
That's it, Randy. Now, speaking of that, the Submission Radio marketing department actually didn't celebrate Christmas or New Year in 2014, and were locked into a heated room to come up with some product ideas for the Couture brand in 2015. And we'd like you to choose your favorite idea out of the following three, okay? So
okay.
The first one is the Randy Couture Signature Scarf Series for gentlemen. It's 100% pure wool and cotton fibers, mean it can also be used to choke a man unconscious if the need arises. And also they're machine wash friendly. So that's number one. Number two, not everybody has a door these days, Randy. So we came up with a Randy Couture shower gym system. This gym is set up in the shower, meaning people are able to work out while cleaning off the sweat at the same time. The adjustable shampoo lets you load up any of your favorite shampoos, and it comes in a steel box, which is perfect to use for packing picnics. The tagline is, you have a shower, you have a gym. Okay, now hold your preference till you hear the third one. The third one is, Randy, the Randy Couture signature hat with a secret compartment to hide your blade and candy in case you get hungry. The Extreme Hattour is SPF 30 plus, is lightweight, and comes in a steel box, which is perfect to use for packing picnics. Now, Randy, which one of these billion-dollar ideas, and I do mean billion, they didn't see their families over the holiday season, do you choose?
Well, I had a couple questions. Does the shower gym, does that stretch your willy too? Will that make that any bigger?
We're going to keep that for the following.
Will there be a special pocket in the hat for condoms? And I think of all those three, I like the scarf idea the best.
Wow, the scarf of all of them. Well, with the hat, it's just a prototype, but we can definitely put in a compartment for condoms. And with the shower gym system, it really is just for work.
Safe sex. It just has to be done.
Yeah, and with the shower gym system, it doesn't stretch your willy, but maybe we'll make a sequel or maybe a side system.
Yeah, that's right. We want to do it. We want to do the infomercial as seen on TV, and when you stretch the willy out, sometimes it's difficult to get on the box. Me and Casper have been trying to
that
get
would
on the
be
box doing that
difficult,
for a
yeah.
while, and it's tough here in Australia to do that on the box.
Those big blurry spots or big black spots in your commercials are really annoying anyway.
Guys, make sure to check out Randy on Twitter. I believe it is at Randy Couture. And obviously check out these awesome movies that are coming out. Cameron and Eddie Lose the Belt, and of course Stretch. Randy, as always, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. You guys have a great day.
Hi, this is Stephen Bonner, and you're listening to Submission Radio. And also, fuck Tito Ortiz.
All right, guys, our next guest is one of our favorites. He's been on the show many a time. He's one of the best trainers out there, and he trains guys such as Donald Cowboy Cerrone, Diego Sanchez, and, of course, the UFC light heavyweight champion Jon Jones. He's none other than Coach Mike Winkeljohn. Welcome back to Submission Radio. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. But something tells me everybody's your favorite when you talk to them.
Well, you got our secret.
Not just me, but it's okay. You know, I need all the help I can get.
Here we go. Well, that's not really true. You are the number one, trainer in our hearts, Wink. There's just no doubt about it. All the fans know it.
Oh, okay. I appreciate it, guys. At least I'm number one to somebody. That's awesome. I feel better.
There's a short list up there. I think some of our favorite guys are Pat Cummins, I think Diego Sanchez, Dennis Bermudez, and yourself. So we're being completely genuine. Let's start off by saying congratulations on a successful 2014. The Jackson Winkeljohn camp had a great 2014. What would you say have been some of your biggest highlights from last year?
You know what? It's kind of funny you say that because Greg and I were just talking about the fact, I'm going to switch on you guys. We hated 2014 because we had so many injuries. We had knee injury after knee injury. You know, John Dodson had a knee injury. Carlos Condon had a knee injury. Those type of things. But Kyle Noak had his knee injury. Jon Jones had his knee injury. It was just, we wanted to get out of 2014 and get back to some normalcy. But honestly, I think we ended the year on a high note. Alistair Overeem got back to hitting, not getting hit, and driving in, and that's kind of how I remember the year. Is we were kind of depressed because of all the injuries, and then Alistair brought it back for the end of the year. So we're real excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's touch on Alistair for a second because his fight with Roy Nelson was just announced. Fans are really, really excited for this one. Wink, how do you deal with a man such as Roy Nelson? How do you foresee, what kind of advantages do you foresee for Alistair in that matchup, and what kind of challenges do you guys foresee in that fight?
Well, Roy, he can knock out anything. He'd knock out, an elephant if you let him. We have to watch out for the right hand. There's no doubt. I think same thing that Stipe used against him can work because we have much faster feet. We can fight a longer length. I think speed is the difference here for us. Alistair has a lot of speed for a heavyweight, and when he uses it right, I think no one can touch him. We just got to be in the right place at the right time.
One thing that I've noticed about Alistair, and I believe we've spoken about it before on the show, there are times where he moves in and he'll throw a strike or an attack, and he'll sort of be stationary for a moment. Is that something that you'll be focusing on? Because obviously against a guy like Roy with that overhand right, it's a dangerous thing.
Yeah. Well, I won't lie. I was trying to focus on that even before we fought Rothwell. And Alistair was doing great in that fight. We had a little cage. He felt a little crowded, but same thing happened. In fact, not only did he stand still, but he actually felt he was off angle on him, but then came right back in the center. He got hit with that first shot. And then the second one, he kind of stood still and then loaded up. So we have been working on it, but that's kind of normal for us is I'll be working on something. It usually takes a couple fights to play out. So the last fight showed a little bit of understanding. You don't want to stand there in front of guys that potentially hurt you, even though he was setting up a takedown in a crazy way. Alistair he's on point. He understands that he can't be standing in front of these guys that can hit him.
Absolutely. So it's going to be a very exciting fight, and we're very excited for it. Now, let's talk about some of the success that you guys just had. Jackson Winkeljohn fighters this past weekend at UFC 182 had a lot of successes. Jon Jones, Cowboy Cerrone, Sean Jordan, all scored great wins. Let's talk about Cowboy. He outclassed Myles Jury with relative ease. Cowboy made it clear how unhappy he was with the fight. What did you think of the performance? And also, is it true that he did like 3 warm-up rounds in the back with, I believe it was Pat Healy or something?
You know what? I walked out in the middle of his warm-up to help John get warmed up, to pre-warm up John. So I think he was doing that. I heard he was doing that. So I didn't see how hard he went, but you know what? He was in tremendous shape. He was, even before he did any warm-up rounds than anybody else, with him and his coaches and the people that he brought in to help him just take a shot after shot after him having to defend the shots, take people down. I mean, Cowboy's an animal. He trains very, very hard, if not harder than almost anybody I know, and he was in tremendous shape for the fight. There's no doubt about it.
And obviously, Cowboy being a notoriously slow starter, you know, we touched on him doing 3 rounds before the fight, which is insane. Do you think that you guys have found the secret to having Cowboy come out, you know, more aggressive in the early goings of his future fights?
Yeah, I think that the longer warm-up has definitely helped him. I mean, it plays out. He has been a slow starter in the past, but once Cowboy gets going, you know, he imposes his will on everybody, and that's the key. Is Cowboy doing what he wants to do, and if he does everything that he's capable of doing, and there's no reason why he won't be a world champion.
Absolutely. And, you know, just looking at Cowboy, you know, he's had 5 fights and 5 wins in the past year. It's a tremendous streak. And now he's facing Benson Henderson at UFC Fight Night Boston. You know, as a coach, how do you feel about Donald taking the fight on such short notice, especially against a guy who's beaten him twice? You
know what? It's Cowboy. That's what he does. I love it because Cowboy is a guy that he's unconventional, but he's a fighter at heart. He'll fight anybody, anytime. He's also probably our most loyal team member. He's great to have it. I wouldn't want him to do a whole bunch of these in a row because it will break his body down. He will be taking shots and potentially, you know, he could lose the fight for the wrong reason. But I'm actually excited that he took this fight. I think you know, he gets bend this time. There's no doubt about it.
You know, I know that athletes train their bodies to peak at a certain time. Is it possible for an athlete or a guy like Cerrone to peak twice in 2 weeks? And also, is doing 2 weight cuts so close to each other, you know, dangerous to his health?
You know what? I think, like I said, I think it could be, but Donald is in such tremendous shape right now. He didn't take any damage, and, you know, I think he's going to pull it off. Do I think it's going to be easy? No, but Donald Cerrone, that's why he's as exciting as he is. He's mentally tough, and he's turned that corner into being comfortable when he's fighting, and it's made a big difference.
Absolutely. And, you know, Mike, I just wanted to ask you, watching a lot of the embedded clips and stuff of what Donald does before his fights, do you ever stress that one of these crazy activities might cause a small injury to him before a fight? I mean, with this one, I believe he was like snowmobiling, flying in a plane. He was doing racing car driving, and that's just what we saw. You know, as a coach, do you ever have to go, now, Donald, you have to calm down a little bit. We don't want you getting hurt before you fight.
You know what? Donald is that guy. He's not going to listen to me. He wouldn't listen to me anyway. He wouldn't even listen to his best friends. I think he was told long ago by someone close to him to not let people tell you what to do and live your own life. And I think he's trying that out. And I think that actually relaxes Donald. I think if he just sat back and thought about his fight all day, he would succumb to the internal freeze that a lot of fighters, and he himself and everybody's had. I mean, 100% of the fighters have had those moments. But I think because he can go do these things that take his attention away, that he enjoys, he fights better because of it. He's proved it. He keeps doing it as of late, and I would be stupid to ever say something to him.
Yeah, it seems like there's a method to his madness. You know, with this fight against Benson Henderson, what do you think are the keys to victory for Donald? What are you guys going to be working on?
Well, you know what, his Muay Thai coach, Henry, will definitely be working on making sure Cowboy's not going to get hit by those big leg kicks that Benson has, and understanding when Benson is going to try to take him down. And I think they'll be trying to lift Benson out of what he wants to do, lift him, get him on his heels a little bit, and push forward. I think pushing forward, Cowboy does to everybody. They know it's coming, but I don't think there's anything. I'm hoping that, that they don't have a plan for it. Just Cowboy, when he imposes his will and pushes forward, is such a tremendous fighter. And honestly, people taking him down now. Donald's got some of the best hips, in our gym. It's incredible how his wrestling has gotten so much better.
Absolutely. I think one fight that fans saw Cowboy in where they didn't really recognize him was his fight with Nate Diaz. Tell us, Wink, if the guys had a rematch, if Cowboy had a rematch with Nate Diaz now, do you think it would go a whole different way? Do you think there would be a completely different outcome?
Yeah, that was all mental for him. Nate Diaz beat him that night, mentally. I think skill-wise, Donald Cerrone has it on anybody. He's got the athleticism. He's definitely got the intelligence. That was one of those moments, like I talked about earlier, where fighters get that mental freeze because they've overthought it. They're letting the other guy impose his will because it's all-consuming. And I think Donald's found his keys, whatever that is, whatever he's doing. There's little tricks, I'm sure, but he's found it, and he's on. And I definitely think you see a different outcome.
Yeah, well, we definitely can't wait to see it play out. Let's jump to Jon Jones. He had a very tough test in Daniel Cormier at UFC 182, and he passed it with flying colors. What did you think of the fight? Did it go how you expected it to go? And was there anything that surprised you about the fight?
I was surprised at how fast Cormier could close the gap. It wasn't just like a drive for a takedown, but he would half-step John so quickly that it would definitely take a lot of the long-range kicks Jon Jones out of the game. It was incredible how he could do that and keep that pace up, and that was hard to deal with, and it made John have to actually back out, plant, and then throw, coming back in off angle with things. So that definitely was impressive to see that Daniel was able to push forward like that in the fight.
Wink, looking back at it as a coach, who would you say was the tougher test for John? Was it Daniel Cormier or Alexander Gustafsson?
Well, as the fight played out, it was definitely Gustafsson. Gustafsson came. He impressed us. He was he did better than we thought. I think I won't lie. I don't think John trained hard enough for that fight. And so I think the tougher fight was definitely Gustafsson. I think it will be again. Of course, because Fast Johnson is looking really good as of late. But Gustafsson came, and I think it might be a little bit having to do with the length, but it definitely wasn't John's night. Everybody has those moments where they don't quite fight up to speed. John still, I thought, won the fight. He outkicked him. He definitely hit him with those bigger shots, hurt his body bad in the fight, and I think we'll definitely get back in the body again here in the future.
Yeah, it was an absolutely fantastic fight. Instant classic. Pretty close, but I would agree with you that John definitely won. If they do have that rematch, that's of course assuming that Gustafsson gets past Anthony Rumble Johnson. You mentioned that Jon Jones possibly didn't train quite as hard as he could have. How different do you think the fight would be when and if they have that rematch?
Totally different. John is we're going to make sure he trains more efficiently to be in better shape. Don, I'm not. I think we've learned a lot in the last couple of fights. We learned a lot about his training, the way he applied himself, not overtraining, so that his conditioning's better. I think he'll be able to press forward even more. Kind of like you've seen with Glover. He went into Glover's world. He was able to attack inside, and you see what he's able to do inside. It's incredible how good he's gotten at throwing things inside and he's really starting to hit the body. And I think that'll be the difference with the Gustafsson fight is if Gustafsson doesn't, stop us, Jon Jones is going to get inside with him and mess him up.
I know that when we spoke to you previously about this fight, you mentioned that you wanted to see Jon Jones going for the takedown more. I know that obviously it's been quite a while since that fight, and Jon Jones' striking looks like it's improved a lot. It's looked fantastic. Do you think that now he may have even more confidence and have even better striking to the point where he may not even need to rely on takedowns against Gustafsson? He may even be able to beat him even more soundly in the stand-up.
Oh yeah, his stand-up has gotten so much better. We're still not good enough at it. I mean, he hit Cormier with I don't know how many straight lefts, but he didn't take him out with it because we're missing a couple of those. We're not snapping our punches a lot. A lot of it had to do with how he was throwing it, that we were doing on purpose to keep Cormier from shooting on us. But with that being said, we've got a ways to go. It's a work in progress, but I think John is scary without his wrestling for anybody in the division.
Absolutely, Mike. Now, something that popped up recently that we just have to touch on quickly was, the fact that John did test positive for the cocaine metabolites in the drug test. And just wondering, what were your thoughts by this? Did you know about this going in? Were you surprised by it? What were your thoughts?
I was surprised by it. I know they had drug tested him. I didn't know they had anything had come up. I was unaware of it. And we're disappointed, but at the same time, we're glad that John has taken the steps necessary to solve this problem. And he's young. everybody's made mistakes, and I'm not the one that, I'm gonna give him a hard time about it when we talk next time again. But we're still standing behind John, and we like having him around. We he's got a great heart. He treats his teammates well. He treats his coaches well. He treats the family well. It just it sucks that happened. It sucks that he got himself in that position. But with that being said, I think the future is bright for John. He will learn from it and go forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one. I just want to ask you, from a sort of coach's perspective, and I just want to sort of break it down a bit. Cocaine, it's not banned out of competition because the State Athletic Commission and WADA, the World Anti-Doping Association, does not see it as a performance-enhancing, drug. We can understand, obviously, steroids being a performance-enhancing drug. However, cocaine just does not seem like it would really help to prepare for a fight at all. To the people that are somehow trying to discredit his win over Cormier, and there are a lot of people on social media, can you give us some insight as to whether, cocaine would actually ever help a person in any way prepare for a fight?
No, I think it'd definitely be detrimental because it's going to take you, when you come down on it, it's going to take your attention away from what you need to do. It's going to have a negative impact. Actually, I think it's going to be worse for his training if he's getting out of focus and going out, and if someone's going out and getting high and then having to come back to training after that type of situation, they're not doing everything they need to do, to compete. So I think it's actually a distraction. It's a shame, but it's happened to a lot of people before, and I don't know why it happened, but again, like I said, I hope he learns from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, people are going, making a huge deal out of it, going crazy over it. Do you think there's been a bit of an overreaction? A lot of people are saying, he may never come back as strong as he was from this. But, I think people are sort of making a much bigger deal out of this than it really is. Do you agree with that?
Well, it is a big deal, and we take it serious because we want the best for John. I want him to grow up for us. So, I think it is a big deal. I'm glad it's being considered a big deal. But as far as the fans or the outsiders taking discredit for his fight, I think a lot of that has to do with wanting to see him fall because he's on top. So they're doing it for the wrong reasons. I'm pissed off about it and not happy about it because it's not good for Jon Jones long-term life-wise. He's got to be better for he himself, his family, and the people that look up to him. But a lot of people are down Jon Jones because they want to see the great ones fall because they don't feel good about themselves, so they have to, they want to see the winner lose. And that sucks for them, those individuals that they spend their whole day on the internet telling everybody all the bad things Jon Jones did. I'm thinking to myself, get a life.
Yeah, I'm amazed always to see how many haters there are. And I've got two more questions about John. Just more sort of as a coach, do you see any other challenges in the light heavyweight division after Gustafsson and Anthony Johnson? Because that's another hot topic at the moment. Do you see anyone else who he might actually have to fight in that division?
No one's jumping out at me right now that I think is going to be able to, rise to the occasion and take John out. But you know what? What happens in MMA, though, it's amazing. People's skill sets change really quickly. They change trainers. All of a sudden, new things dawn on them. And I'm sure in 6 months that'll change. Somebody's coming up. People are starting to do MMA, as their only sport now, whereas before they always used to be just wrestling or jiu-jitsu or they were stand-up guys. But now people are doing it day to day in gym, and I'm sure there's some kids out there that are 20 years old that we don't even know about that a year from now are just going to be tremendous.
Yeah, there's some animals out there, Mike. And, one thing that sort of was on my mind as I was watching him fight DC is even though DC dropped down from heavyweight, John just looked like he was a weight class above him because he's so long and he's so tall. Having seen John spar against other heavyweights at the gym, such as Travis Brown, Overeem, Frank Mir, and Arlovsky, how do you think John would do if he moves up to heavyweight? Do you think that's a move and do you think that's a move that's going to happen soon in the future?
I don't see it happening soon. I think he needs to clean out the division and do what you do. John didn't have to cut that much weight. Do I think he could beat the heavyweights? Yes, I do. But I think he's got a few more light heavyweight first, and then I think it's all about. I won't lie. A lot of it's going to be about having the right fight. It's all about making the right amount of money and having the right fight. It's time to be selfish for Jon Jones, and that's. whatever anybody says, that's human nature. Everybody wants the best of themselves. So I think he'll take the heavyweight fight when it's the right one, and good for him, because I can't see anybody else in this world doing anything other than that.
Now, another one of your star pupils is Holly Holm, and she's somebody who it seems has been destined to go into the UFC, but there's always been a few bumps along the way. We've been super excited to see her debut, but, you know, on a sort of positive note, do you think that this may actually be a good thing in the sense that Holly has had more time to prepare for her UFC debut?
Well, she's itching. I'll tell you that. I'm not sure if it's been a good thing or a bad thing. It's you know, she had this injury, but she's pushed through it, and she's been looking great. In fact, even today in wrestling practice, I was quite excited today what she was able to do. So this is one of those things. I think she's itching. She needs to get in there and do it. And then I'd like to have a fight again right afterwards. I really would, because I think Holly likes to fight, and she's going to take the challenge, and there's no way in her mind she's jumping into the UFC for any other reason other than to beat the best woman in the world. She's not just doing it to be there. She's going there to go all the way to the top.
Absolutely. And, you know, Wink, we've been waiting to ask you this for a while. You know, we had Diego Sanchez on the show a whole number of times. And, you know, the last couple of years have been a bit tough for the Nightmare. A lot of fans have been asking about his style and why he doesn't use his wrestling and ground and pound as much as he used to. I'm just wondering, what is your take as a coach, and what would you normally work on with Diego? Do you encourage him going into these roles? Would you rather him focus on his wrestling more in the future?
Oh, yeah, definitely. You know what? Although, you know, Diego's a guy that can suck somebody into a brawl, you know, and you saw with Melendez, you know, if we can get him to calm down, you suck somebody in a brawl, and all of a sudden up the middle, you know, he was able to drop Melendez. Sometimes the brawl, you know, takes you to a whole new level. So Diego, because he's got the hardest head in MMA, a real thick skull, apparently, sometimes that can be a good thing, but yeah, I'd like to see him go back to a lot more wrestling, because I think the wrestling then will go back to setting up the strikes. I think you need to blend them together, because then you have more dimensions to your game.
Yeah, we definitely can't wait to see Diego come back. Now, Coach Wink, we're going to do something fun with you, which we usually do, the submission rate or tap out round. I've been through it before. A whole bunch of fun questions, and you answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. You ready?
Yep.
Anderson Silva versus Nick Diaz. What is Coach Wink's prediction?
First round knockout, Anderson Silva.
Wow. Now let's get out of MMA for a second and go into Wink's personal life. What's one movie Coach Wink always watches when it's on TV?
Shoot, don't watch TV, but Deliverance.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's pretty heavy. I don't know if I could take watching that movie more than once or twice, so big respect to you Wink, for that one.
CM Punk going to the UFC, good idea or bad idea?
Interesting idea.
Yeah, I always thought he should have trained with you guys, because I think you guys have one of the better camps out there. Now, Mayweather versus Pacquiao, you know, this fight looks like it might happen soon. Who do you think wins it?
Well, my heart goes with Pacquiao, but my logic head and God-given talent goes with Mayweather.
God-given talents, okay.
What was the fight of the year for the UFC, or in your opinion, for you in 2014?
Gosh, was Hunt Junior Dos Santos in 2014, or was that last year? That's the last one I remember that got me so excited. I don't know.
I think that was 2013. Were you excited for Verdum and Mark Hunt?
No, not as excited.
It's hard to get Wink excited, but, you know, good to see that you do get excited. Now, you know, a lot of our listeners are Australian, Wink, so you'll excuse this question, but, you know, what's the biggest tourist attraction in Albuquerque?
Sandy Peak Tramway. We have a tram that goes from 5,000 to closer to 11,000 feet up the front of the mountain. You can be on top of altitude in 20 minutes.
Wow, that's cool. Now, George St. Pierre's been talking about running into a UFO with Rashad Evans when driving through the Albuquerque desert. Have you ever had any run-ins with UFOs yourself?
No, never.
Wow. Now, you know, I was going to go over to Albuquerque to experience this tram and see some UFOs, but now that there's no UFOs, I don't know if there's enough reason for me to go there. Now, Coach Wink, have you
I'm hurt. Our gym's there. You think you would come for our gym, you know, UFOs. are, they're unidentified, so you're going to have fun with it. Our gym's a known fact. You can come have fun at our gym.
I don't want to embarrass the fighters week, I don't want to show off my beer gut there. Let me ask you this question. You're probably one of the hardest working guys in MMA that we know. Has Coach Wink gotten a chance to have a holiday with his family since we last spoke?
Actually, I took a small holiday with my family probably back in September, so it was October. It wasn't so bad. I went to Catalina Island out in L.A. and hung out for a few days, so it was nice. But looking forward to one in about a month, a big one.
Awesome. What's the destination? Where are you looking to go?
I'd have to tell you, I'm going to Kauai. I'm going to go out there and hang out and I don't know, Kauai and Hawaii.
Hey, nice. Now, there's a lot of crazy guys at Jackson Winkeljohn's. We mean that in the most complimentary way. Who's the fastest driver at Jackson Winkeljohn's?
The fastest driver? Gosh, I don't drive with any of them because they're scary. They're out of control. I wouldn't be able to tell you which was the fastest one at the moment. No, couldn't do it. Probably Cowboy. You know what? I take it back. You know what? Let me just say, Cowboy Cerrone would probably be the fastest because anything that kid does, he has to be in first place. He has to win it all.
Now, we know you, and you're a very supportive coach. You'd agree with that statement, wouldn't you? That you're a very supportive coach. So let me. Yes. Okay, so you are a very supportive coach. So let me ask you this question. You're very close to Cowboy, and he loves to do these activities. As a coach, has he talked you into doing any of these crazy adrenaline activities yet? And try to use the fact that you're his coach, to make you feel bad and make you do it.
No, he knows I'm old, and I just want to train.
Now, you said that 2014 was a little bit depressing for you guys, obviously all the knee injuries. What's your number one New Year's resolution for 2015?
Well, we already started off with some wins. I think our New Year's resolution is to oversee our fighters and their training better to make sure that they are better conditioned and not usually, as sometimes in the past, they've been overtrained. So that's a resolution, is just make sure that we get all of our ducks in a row to do it even at a higher and better, more efficient level.
Well, it sounds like the Ducks are very well in a row right now, Wink. We wish you a very happy 2015, and we're excited to see what the gym is going to do to the landscape of MMA in 2015. Guys, you would be crazy not to go and follow Coach Wink on Twitter at MMA Coach Wink. He has one of the best profiles out there, and make sure that when you travel to Albuquerque, you don't just go for the UFOs and the tram. You go for the gym as well. I believe, Wink, have you guys finished building the facilities for people to be able to stay at the gym when they come down to Albuquerque?
I'm actually scanning it right now. We're doing construction on it right now. No, we're looking at it'll be ready in April, and I'm hoping that we get a whole bunch of people from Australia want to come out and train with us. You're more than welcome. You can stay at the gym. You don't even need a car because it's downtown. Everything's accessible. It's a great experience. So the website, everything will be online here pretty soon, and you'll see it.
Awesome. We can't wait, and we'll definitely be spreading the word. As always, it's been an absolute pleasure, Mike, and I thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
And there you have it, guys. The great Mike Winkeljohn. I know when you have a show like this, like Submission Radio Casper, it's sort of like when you have kids and you're not really supposed to have favorites. And at the start of the interview, Mike said, you tell everybody that they're your favorite. But I think without a shadow of a doubt, if we don't go through the full list, Mike is definitely up there. The guy's just been such a great guest, over last year and now. And I think he's been on the show. What was that? Like the fourth time he was on the program?
I think fourth time, yeah. And that's partly one of the reasons why he's, I don't want to say our favorite. And I'll tell you what, when I have kids, I'm absolutely going to have a favorite. And I'm going to make the other kids feel that and tell them every day, hey, old Jimmy's the favorite. You guys
is that going to be like Homer Simpson when they had to play each other in the hockey game at the end of the Simpson episode, Lisa versus Bart?
Every day is going to be in my house like Homer Simpson when they had to play each other hockey. I'll have like 3 kids. They'll be like whatever, Jimmy, Casper Jr., and then kid 3. I won't even remember the third kid's name.
Well, I know definitely that I must be your best friend then. I must be the top guy because I'm always sitting up the front with you. So haven't had to win any hockey games just yet, but always up the front. So I think that's a sign that I'm doing okay.
I'm not going to give you the Dana White. You're in the mix. No, you definitely. No, you're definitely my best friend. Yeah, no, Coach Wink, absolutely awesome. I love the way he answers questions. Very quick, very concise. And hey, we just had Randy Couture for the third time on our show. No mentions of him being our favorite, although we do love having Randy on the show. It's really good to be back. It's obviously our first show in 2015. I want to talk about a few things, namely this Jon Jones situation. Obviously, he just got busted for cocaine metabolites in his test. I believe the test was from the 4th of December. And I want to talk about, some of the things that have been surrounding it, our opinions, our thoughts, Joe Rogan's reaction. I don't know if anybody's seen that video of Joe Rogan's reaction. You should definitely check it out. As always, Joe Rogan's reactions are a treat, and the crack team at the Joe Rogan Labs, the Joe Rogan Experience team, the detectives there have figured out that Jon Jones is probably, allegedly probably doing cocaine if he did it while he was in Brazil, because they deduced that it takes about 4 days for that stuff to get out of your system. He was leaving Brazil on the 30th of November. He had a tweet saying, "Bye, Brazil." And then the test came out on the 4th, or I think that's when he was tested. And that's basically when the cocaine dabbling probably would have done. I'm just curious, Dennis, what are your thoughts on this whole situation? What are your thoughts on, Jon Jones allegedly doing cocaine? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing? Is it as big a deal as people have made it out to be? What do you think?
Well, Casper, I definitely think it's a good thing. I think, look, I think I want to find your reaction after I sort of finish giving you my opinion. But when I went online and I saw that Jones tests positive for cocaine, I thought one of those crazy, wacky hackers got through into like Bloody Elbow or something. You just put up some random news to blow everybody's mind. And when I saw it, I couldn't believe it. It wasn't that. It wasn't that he's sort. I guess he was one of the last guys that expect, to have a headline like that, especially when a day before everybody was, including me, thinking that he put on such an amazing, magnificent performance and was going to have a strong 2015, was going to train in between camps, something that he says he hasn't done in a while, and become the greatest. So going from that to hearing that he's gone into rehab and the whole cocaine thing, I was just dumbfounded. I could not believe it. I still have to sort of pinch myself to think that I'm not dreaming about this. Not that I dream about athletes doing drugs or anything, but it was a surreal sort of realization that he's more human than people really think. And obviously, when he first got into the sport, he was sort of holier than thou, and I think he got under a lot of people's nerves because he said some really silly things, and he really tried to act like a model citizen and a model athlete. And now, sort of, in the years gone past, he's sort of come out of his shell a little bit more. He had that Bentley incident where he crashed his car with a couple of ladies in the back, and he's had his share of issues. But yeah, I still did not think something like that was going to happen. Casper, take me into your mind. You turn on your computer and close a few of the questionable tabs, only to find that Jon Jones has been a bit sus. What goes through your mind when you see the headline?
Strap yourself into the roller coaster of my brain. Basically, I was surprised just because it was Jon Jones. And yeah, you're right. I wouldn't expect him necessarily to test positive for cocaine of all things. Because you're right, because it is Jon Jones and he cares so much about his image. Having said that, the guy is on top of the world. He's 27 years old. He's had success since, I don't know, 21, 22. I can't remember how old he was when he won the belt, but he's basically had success for a long time from a young age. And people are surprised that this guy's, maybe doing cocaine at a party here or there. I really don't think it's as big a deal as people have necessarily made it out to be. But, I mean, it is a big deal when your light heavyweight champion gets tested for, positive for cocaine. Of course people are going to react. Of course it's going to be a big thing. It's going to be news. When I say it's not a big deal, I just think a lot of people are giving Jon Jones a lot of hatred, a lot of shit. They're trying to discredit him for the Daniel Cormier fight. And I got to be honest, I would be guessing here that he's probably one of many. We're not all angels. I think a lot of fighters really good people and everything, but let's be honest, they're still people. I think you know, this whole drug taboo thing. You know, drugs obviously get a bad rep, and I don't do drugs. Dennis, you don't do drugs. We don't condone them on the show or anything like that. But I also believe that people can do whatever they want in their personal time. It's a personal choice. If people want to put drugs in their system, that's completely up to them. Now, if it was a steroid, different story. You're fighting guys. It's competition. You're inflicting pain, and if you have an advantage, then that's not cool. But if it's a party drug like cocaine, which, you know, it's not like he took it during the fight or before the fight. It was a month before the fight. I guess he was in Brazil. He was probably at a party, you know, whatever, did some cocaine, and then he went back to training. I mean, I'm like Ron Burgundy when his dog eats the wheel of cheese. I'm not even mad. I'm impressed. It's like, and I'm not trying to say drugs are cool or anything, but to say, Jesus, if he's out living and doing cocaine, he can still go through a training camp and beat one of the greatest fighters. And let's make it clear, cocaine's not a performance enhancing drug. So I just think a lot of the people that are throwing stones and saying Jon Jones this and that, and hey, we're gonna laugh about it. We're gonna put up tweets of, you know, Jon Jones and Photoshop Tyron Bigham's and stuff like that, because it's funny. All right, you have to make these things a light situation. But I just really, if you look at the big picture, you see him as a celebrity, and you think about how many boxers and you know, other celebrities out there in Hollywood and stuff like that doing coke and whatever. I just really don't think it's the biggest deal in the world.
Yeah, you know, and it's funny because I was just reading something that Jake Shields had to say about Jon Jones. This is basically what he said. He said, "You'd be surprised how it is with rich and famous people, everyone doing drugs, hot girls everywhere." Shields said, "It's just way too easy to get sucked in." He goes on to say it just cost him millions of dollars in sponsorship money. It's a pretty serious issue to throw out there. Obviously, he shouldn't be doing it, and he probably needs a rehab process if he needs to help on that end. But it seems unfair to blast him for something he wasn't supposed to be tested for. You know, and that's a good point by Shields there. You know, look, the fact of the matter is, and I absolutely agree with you, Cass. The guy is human after all, and you know, I think a lot of people, a lot of journalists, and a lot of fighters, they're sort of taking this ball and, you know, running home with it, and it's a bit too much. I mean, the fact of the matter is, you know, the guy's not a criminal. He you know, he didn't kill anyone. He and people are acting like, you know, he's the worst thing that's happened, you know, over the last few days. The guy's just human. Absolutely agree with you. And, you know, so many fighters have had issues with drugs. You know, we don't really want to get into it, but, you know, there's a lot of fighters who have had issues with drugs. And let's just say it like this. You know, you brought up a good point. Like, you and me don't do drugs. But let's say he goes to a party and he experimented with cocaine. You know, doesn't necessarily mean that he's a coke addict. Like, it doesn't mean that he's, you know, sitting there and, you know, he has a bag of coke and it falls into the carpet and now he's like on the carpet trying to snort it out of the little strands or something like that. You know, I mean, he went into rehab, but what people need to understand is, you know, a lot of it has to do with PR and marketing. Him not losing, like Jake said, the millions and millions of dollars that he does make through sponsorship, which he absolutely deserves through all the hard work that he's put in. So yeah, so he goes to rehab. But he's not, you know, a coke addict, and he made a mistake. And, you know, look, I know that Jon Jones has said and done a lot of really dumb things, but I think this is and usually I understand people's perspective, and I can see how someone would say, look, some of the kids, they may be, you know, he may be their role model or whatever, but I think kids these days are a lot smarter than to go out and do cocaine just because Jon Jones has. And if anything, these kids are seeing what happens to someone when they get caught on doing stuff like cocaine, you know? So I think people need to calm down a little bit and take their pitchforks and put them back in the shed and relax a little bit. You know, it's just a young kid who has stardom at a young age and a lot of pressure on him, and he made one tiny mistake. And now he's paying for it really badly anyway, so let's lay off the fella.
Yeah, I mean, look, in terms of his punishment, there doesn't seem to be too much. Like, the UFC hasn't really done much. They're obviously applauding him going to rehab, which honestly was the only thing he could have done. If you get busted as, you know, a public, whatever, celebrity, public figure, of course you're going to go to rehab so that it looks like, you know, you're trying to make things better. And I'm not saying it's a ruse. I'm not saying Jon Jones isn't trying to make things better. There's a lot of things I want to say. You know, in terms of being a role model, I don't know. I've always kind of thought that you get one life, you got to live your life, and sometimes the pressure of being a role model, it's a little bit unfair. It's like if you're a celebrity, all of a sudden you're a role model. But it's a bit like, well, you know, I think some people didn't necessarily ask to be a role model. I don't know. Jon Jones is a fighter. Like, is he trying to be a role model, or is he just trying to be the best fighter in the world? And it's like, if people look up to him, then I mean, that's really their choice. But you know, I'm very much a believer of you have your own choices in life. If you don't want to look up to someone, you don't have to. And Arj Barker, he's a comedian. He's in Flight of the Conchords. Love him. I think most people know him as American. And he made a hilarious joke about, it was ages ago, about the Olympian. Oh, what was his name? The swimmer. What's his name, Dennis?
Phelps? Was it Phelps?
Yeah, Michael Phelps. Yeah. And he, I think he was on the Wheaties box. They took him off the cereal. And Arj Barker was like, why would you take a stoner? Because obviously Michael Phelps had that incident with the bong or marijuana. And Arj Barker was like, why would you take off a stoner off a box of cereal? Because the only people that eat cereal are stoners and kids. And obviously the stoners are going to buy it. And then the kids, it's like, well, what are you going to say to your kids? Like, well, kids, don't do drugs. Or you just may end up being the most successful Olympian of all time and win like 8 gold medals. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, what if you want to be the best engineer in the world, you know? No one really, it's like, I agree with you on the point that he wants to be the best fighter in the world. He might not necessarily want to be a role model to people. So what, does that make him automatically a role model? Like if you and me want to go work in a factory and be the best damn, you know, Nike shoe people ever, you know, does that mean we become role models? You know, it's just because, you know, he's doing something in the public light, you know, he didn't really sign up to be a role model. I don't know. I agree with you.
With the whole, with Jon Jones, you know, people sort of say, oh, he's got a problem and this and that. And you know, I agree with you, Dennis. It's the first thing I thought of. He got popped for cocaine metabolites. It doesn't, you don't know how much he was doing. You don't know how often he does it. Nobody knows these things. I do want to read something, right? And this is a quote from Greg Howard. Greg Howard has been posting articles, and this is what he said. He said, "This doesn't come out of nowhere. In reporting the story, I heard a lot of rumors about Jon Jones's cocaine use, some of which went past what you'd expect of a rich young celebrity in 2014. I left those alone partly because it's a long way from rumor to solid fact, and partly because, as evidenced by his success, whatever he's been up to late at night hasn't hurt his athletic performance much. This is worth noting just by way of saying that this is more likely than not something that actually could affect his career as opposed to the result of one night's bad decision. Just a few minutes ago, I got this text from a source close to Jones. Can't believe it took this long for Jon to pop on coke." So,
is that the guy that followed him around for that article?
I'm not too sure, to be honest.
Okay,
I didn't do my
think it
research.
might be, yeah.
He's a Deadspin writer, right?
Right. Yeah, I think like he followed him around for a while because he wrote an article about him, and yeah, I think that's what happened, and that stuff popped up in the process.
Okay, possibly. So, you know, Greg Howard has a few reasons to sort of believe, and he's passing on, you know, alleged information that, you know, maybe Jon Jones has been doing more coke than previously. Look, I honestly think it's really simple. You know, when people think like drug addicts, you think of people like, you know, really bad at their job, families being torn apart, non-functioning, and this and that. And then you look at Jon Jones, and he's the polar opposite. He's a guy who's really, really, really good at his job. Honestly, clearly his job performance has not been affected at all. I don't know. It's kind of like, let's say you've got your own business, whatever. You've got a dude who does drugs or whatever, but he comes to work and he just is the most amazing employee. And then he goes home and he does some bongs or whatever. It's like, does it really matter? I guess it's a different story because Jon Jones is in the public light, but I just want to make a big point about, you know, it's not a case where, oh, Jon Jones came out, Daniel Cormier destroyed him, and then it came out, oh yeah, Jon Jones was coked up, and oh yeah, you know, drugs are affecting his career. No, it's a completely different story. I think it's night and day, and it's two completely different things. You know, he works hard, he's the greatest fighter, you know, at the moment in the sport. And if he wants to, you know, go out and do whatever, I mean, it's not really our business and it's not really our place to judge. You think a 27-year-old celebrity with millions and millions of dollars isn't going to party? That's insane to think. That's really naive.
That's right. And, you know, let's talk about sort of the other side of that whole situation. You know, a lot of people have been talking about, and look, I'm not a big expert on this, so you might know more about the whole situation than me. But you know, Nick Diaz, he tested positive for marijuana, and he was suspended for a year, I believe. Now, some people are saying, what's going to happen to Jon Jones? Is he just going to go to rehab? When he comes out, does he go back in and he keeps his title and he fights on? Does he need to be stripped of the title? Why was Nick Diaz punished so severely, but Jon Jones isn't? So there's lots of that kind of conversation going on. You know, what do you think about that kind of thing? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, you know, I think a lot of it comes down to the NSAC's rules, the State Athletic Commission rules, which follow the WADA rules, the World Anti-Doping Association. And yeah, you know, it's a good thing you mentioned that, because I want to talk about some tweets that came out. One of them actually, Matt Riddle, right? Because I want to look something up, but I just want to talk about Matt Riddle for a second. And he basically mentioned, I'm just trying to, here we go. UFC at Dana White, you dumb bitches, fire me for weed while you allow fighters to use hard drugs with zero consequences. Hashtag UFC is trash. Obviously in reference to Jon Jones popping for coke. Now, there's a huge difference. Jon Jones was, he apparently, and again, I'm not 100% sure how this process works, but the Athletic Commission have said that he should never have been tested for cocaine. All right, so it seems like there was some kind of error made, and that they don't test for that, and they shouldn't have. Another thing is, this is an out of competition test. So in competition is, I believe, 12 hours before the fight and directly after the fight, with enough time to obviously deposit a sample. So he was tested a month before. That's technically out of competition. And obviously the rules are different for what you can and can't have in your system. If Jon Jones had tested positive for cocaine during, in competition, I think it would have been a different story. Same for marijuana. And this is where it gets different, because Matt Riddle failed his marijuana tests in competition. They were his post-fight tests. Now, whether you want to discuss, whether weed helps, doesn't help, that's a debate for another day. Whatever. The rules are what they are. And Matt Riddle, unfortunately, he wasn't within the rules. Had Matt Riddle done the same test a month before his fight, he would not have failed. And why it's a bigger ramification, Jon Jones did his fight, he won, they don't need to overturn that fight. Whereas with Matt Riddle's fights, those were then made no contest. And I believe they were against Che Mills and Chris Clements. So when you've got two fights on a fighter's career and it's like, oh, those were no contests, it's a tough spot for a promotion. Whereas with Jon Jones, as far as his career goes, as far as his fight records, it's untouched because cocaine is not on the banned substance list that's made by WADA, the World Anti-Doping Association, which I believe oversees, the Olympic testing. So I think that's the biggest difference there. It's not a case of, the UFC chose not to punish Jon Jones, or the State Athletic Commission chose not to because he's a cash cow. They just can't. It's not within the rules. You know what I mean?
Cash cow, I like that word. And my thing to fans of that as well is, I think it was, because obviously some of the rules I don't agree with, and the marijuana thing I think really needs to be looked at, and we can talk about that in another episode down the line. And I wasn't happy when Nick Diaz was suspended for such a long time, because we couldn't see him fight for such a long time. My thing to fans is, to the ones that are saying we want to see Jon Jones, punished and take away the belt and suspend him. Do you really want to see possibly one of the greatest fighters you'll ever see ever? No one knows if anyone will ever be greater than Jon Jones, Do you really want to see a guy like that have to sit on the sidelines for a year, lose his title, when there's all these amazing fights this guy could be fighting and he's in his prime, I mean, he made a mistake. We know he's made a mistake. And look, I don't know what's going to happen with him sponsorship-wise. I think Reebok said they're going to stick around with him. But no doubt, he will probably lose quite a lot of money because of it. And he's got to deal with all this stuff, like his family has to deal with all this stuff, and it's tough for him probably, and it's embarrassing and all that other stuff. And he's got to live with it for the rest of his life as well, which is annoying. This stuff sticks with you, unfortunately, forever. But I want to see the guy fight, I want to see him come out of rehab or whatever that he's got, and I want to see him fight. I want to see him fight Gustafsson. I want to see him fight some other dudes. I want to see him possibly go up to heavyweight one day. I want to see Jon Jones in his prime. I don't want him to stay out for a year and maybe even lose motivation for the sport and go buy a business or do something else. I want to see Jon Jones fight. So I'm not one of those people that wants to see Jon Jones suspended for a while or get his title taken away from him. I think he's going to learn from this situation, but I want to see the guy fight in 2015. That's just me, I really want to see him fight.
I would agree, and I think, as MMA fans, there's a lot of bitter people out there, and I think as MMA fans, what your main interest should be, I get it. I get, being caught up in the drama and all that kind of stuff. But what your main interest should be is watching great fights. And Jon Jones puts on great fights. He puts on exciting fights, and we're witnessing greatness, in action. So if you're an MMA fan, you're saying, oh, he should be punished, he should be suspended for a year. It's like, why would you want that? If I could, and this is why I'd be a terrible commission, but if I was in charge of handing out suspensions, I'd give a lot of slaps out on the wrist. I'd be like, oh, you rascal, get out of here. Don't do that again. Why? Because I'd want to see the fighters fight. I like you said, I don't want to see Nick Diaz miss out on a year, and I don't want to see Jon Jones miss out on another year. And the other point is, a lot of people saying, oh, Jon Jones and your family and this and that, and it's damaging to your family and this and that. I don't understand why all of a sudden people care about Jon Jones's family. Like, they're not my family. I don't care about Jon Jones's family. I don't mean that in a rude way. It's just like, if I'm going to start caring about Jon Jones's family, I guess I'm going to start caring about everybody's family in the world. That's just not my problem. And a lot of, it's like, you don't know what's happening with Jon Jones's family. Is it tearing them apart? Maybe, or maybe not. Maybe they're all kosher. Maybe they're holidaying somewhere and it's all good, and they know about, Jon Jones's alleged drug use and whatnot. So a lot of people that are using that as an excuse, I think it's a little bit, over dramatic, saying, oh, Jon Jones's family and this and that. Don't act like you care about Jon Jones's family, because the truth is, no one really does. It's not your job. Worry about the guy. If you're a fan of Jon Jones, then be more interested in what he's doing, but don't start acting like you care about his family all of a sudden.
Yeah, that's right. Won't somebody please think of the children? I was going to say, here's another side of this whole discussion. All right, so now we've got people online, and they're like, some athletes, they never come back the same way after an addiction to cocaine, and who knows if we'll ever see the same Jon Jones again. And before I get your opinion on that, my opinion on it is, in my opinion, and I wasn't out with Jon Jones every Saturday and Friday night in Albuquerque. And, if I was, we just spoke to Greg Jackson. If I was, I'd be on that tram that goes all the way across Albuquerque, because that sounds badass.
Sweet tram action.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'd just live on the tram, But yeah, guys, you got to check out the tram. And, my thing is, just like we said, he's a guy, he did it once, he experimented with it, maybe he experimented with it a number of times, but he doesn't come off like an addict to me. I think he's going to go into rehab, he's going to go in there, maybe clear his mind a little bit, that's fine, come out, and I think we'll see the same Jon Jones, if not better, in his next fight. What do you think, Cass? What do you think of these people saying, oh, who knows if he'll ever come back and be the same again?
Look, that's the thing about MMA. As soon as you put your stocks in one option, it seems that the opposite happens. That's why I don't bet on MMA ever, because I like to think I know what's going to happen, but for some reason, I never win money on it. But to be honest with you, I think Jon Jones will come back stronger. I think he'll be fine. If he was doing cocaine, let's say he did it once, or let's say he's been doing it for a while. Well, he's still beating these top guys. He just defeated Daniel Cormier, a guy who's looked untouchable, former Olympian, all that in a bag of chips, and he beat him very soundly. So I don't think it's affected him at all. And if he does come out of rehab and stops doing coke, who's to say it affected him at all? But let's say he stops doing coke and he goes to, lives in Albuquerque, and he trains consistently and trains even harder. I don't think there's any reason to expect that he won't be as successful as he's already been. I think people talk about addiction and this and that. I honestly think Jon Jones's biggest addiction is wanting to become the greatest. I think he's very much addicted to that whole philosophy and obsessed with it. And I think really, I don't know. Personally, I've never done cocaine in my life. I would say for Jon Jones, one of the biggest highs is probably having his hand raised after a big fight. I know there's probably a lot of people out there who will be like, you can't talk about that high and this and that. But yeah, I honestly think to Jon Jones it's a lot more important being the greatest, and I don't think he's going to let that slip away due to some nose candy. That's right, and tan shorts. He likes to wear tan shorts a lot, I've noticed. Another addiction? Well, he could focus all his energy into that. I was going to say, a funny story here. Dennis Rodman, and it's not me, I'm Dennis Shkaratov, but Dennis Rodman, when he played with the Bulls and they were in the playoffs, so this guy used to go out every night, the night before the games, and he used to, I read this in his autobiography, he used to drink and do all kinds of stuff the night before the game, would get home like at 7 in the morning, and then everybody got in his case about
and they were like, how could you go out the night before a big game like that? You know, are you crazy? You can't do this to yourself. So basically, he didn't go out the night before a playoff game, and he went to bed at a normal time, and he ate healthy. And the next day, he got up and he played the worst game in his career. It turns out going out till 7 in the morning and partying all night long before the games brought out the best in Dennis Rodman. So it's funny, actually. It just shows that sort of everybody has their own thing. And I'm not saying that Jon Jones needs to do cocaine to be the greatest, but you know, each to their own. Everybody's got their own way that they work. You know, Cass, I know you like to stay up late sometimes and, you know, work through the night. And I'm an early bird, and I hit the sack by 11:30. You know, but to us that's normal. That's how we function best. So people need to lay off.
Yeah, now, Skeeter, he ain't hurting anybody. I just want to, make something clear that, you know, we're not condoning drugs at all. I'm not saying drugs are good. I'm not saying people should do drugs. I'm just saying people need to give this guy a bit of a break. You know, the dude's a celebrity, and, you know, you really only live one life, and when you're given a lot more opportunities than other people, there are some people, if they had Jon Jones's money, they'd be dead by now because of the amount of drugs and bullshit they'd buy and stuff like that. So I really think, if you look at the big picture and you see how successful this guy's been, cocaine use or no cocaine use does not take anything away from him.
Absolutely. You know, I think we're done talking on this subject, Cass. Another thing that I wanted to quickly cover with you, because we don't have that much time, is our very own Aussie, adopted Aussie, Hector Lombard. He got announced as fighting against Rory MacDonald at UFC 186 in Montreal. What were your thoughts when you saw that?
Exciting. I think people have been talking for a long time about how nobody wants to fight Hector Lombard, and how why isn't he discussed more when it comes to title contention. And then boom, a win over Josh Berkman. You know, he's come back after a long layoff, and bam, now he's fighting Rory MacDonald, a guy who a lot of people thought was guaranteed to get that next title shot. And now, obviously, because the trilogy has been announced, Johnny Hendricks and Robbie Lawler are going to have the rubber match. Yeah, this is really exciting stuff. Hector Lombard, if he beats Rory MacDonald, he's in there for a title shot. As an Aussie, as a guy who lives in Australia, I'm super excited. What do you think, Dennis?
Well, I think the UFC have been listening to our show once again.
Clearly.
Because Super Show, November, big Hectorino wins in March against MacDonald.
April.
There you go. Does that mean the big man will have a title shot in none other than the great Melbourne, Australia? I mean, for the Super Show. That could be a dreamlike situation for fans, and that would put butts in seats, as the pro wrestlers like to say. So I'm definitely very interested. And, you know, with Rory MacDonald, you know, a lot of people are going to say, look, this guy got, you know, sort of the rough end of the stick. He's fought the best of the best and is still yet to get a title shot. But, yeah, that is unfortunate. But look, let's say if he won the title, he'd still have to fight tough dudes. So look, if he gets this one out of the way and he does beat Hector Lombard, it'll just be one less guy that he has to fight when he gets the championship. So either way, a fascinating matchup. Very interested to see how this one works out, and happy that Hector got a shot. I mean, a lot of people were saying, look, the UFC's not really giving him a shot. They're not giving him the top guys. They don't really want to see him up there, but here it is. They gave him the shot. I think they know that big Super Show would really benefit having him on the card and having a title fight, and I think they're behind it all. So very interested to see what happens.
Yeah, I think they've definitely been listening to our show. I just whipped out the old hand calculator, and the fingers say 7 months. So if they fight in April, you've got 7 months until November. I don't know, timing-wise, like, I don't know if that's too long to wait. I don't know if they're going to stick Hector Lombard in a fight in between then. But honestly, if he does beat Rory MacDonald, that's a big if. We're going to talk about predictions way, way later down the road. But if Hector Lombard beats Rory MacDonald, 7 months, I don't think that's too crazy to wait for a title shot, and they would definitely want to do that, you know, in the November Stadium show. And this has always been my theory. If you're going to do 56,000 seater show here in Melbourne, Australia, yeah, you can bring out the big names, but for the people, you want people who don't necessarily watch MMA, but if they hear, hey, there's an Aussie guy, there's a local guy, he's got the title shot, he may be the champion of the world, whether you're into MMA or not into MMA, Australia's a very sporting, and Melbourne especially, very sporting sort of nation, and they're going to be like, right, I'm going to go down and buy a ticket to see this Aussie dude. I don't even know who he is, but I want to see an Aussie become, you know, the best at something, the world champion. So I think it'd be a great idea. But it's interesting with Hector Lombard because he was calling everybody out, Matt Brown and Tyron Woodley especially. He said he's happy to fight Robbie Lawler. if Robbie obviously wins the title, and he did, and he didn't get any of those guys who would be more stepping stones. He's literally gotten the top dog who isn't a champion, Rory MacDonald. If he beats him, that's, I would say, immediate title shot.
Yeah, no, it's a great opportunity. So very excited about that. And, Saul Berkman's legs after his fight with Lombard. There's some black and blue there. Really, yeah.
I thought you were going to say they were nice and shaved.
I think he let them grow out a little bit, but those legs really fell down the steps, if you know what I mean. They were black and blue all the way through. And I absolutely agree with you. Aussies are a lot like the Irish. We don't drink Guinness, but we drink the VB. And they will go to Etihad Stadium at 9 in the morning or whenever the card's going to start. Unfortunately, here, guys, the card starts kind of early, but they will go there, and they're coming out in force to support old Hector. So very interested to see. And of course, like you mentioned, no guarantees here because it is a very tough matchup. And when we do break it down, I'll probably say that it'll look like Rory MacDonald has the advantage in that one. But I guess we'll talk about that one a bit later.
Yeah, look, for now, I think we're going to wrap it up because it's been a long show. Huge thank you to our guests this week, obviously John Kavanagh, Randy Couture, and of course one of our favorites, Mike Winkeljohn. This is like his nickname now, like Mike the Favorite Winkeljohn.
Yeah, we should make T-shirts and headbands. And guys, if you get a chance to go out to the cinemas, interesting movie out called Foxcatcher. That's with Channing Tatum. It's about Mark Schultz and Dave Schultz and great wrestlers, and Steve Carell's in there. And yeah, the movie's pretty interesting. If you guys don't know the story about these guys and sort of how it all happened and in the end, which was really, really sad, check out the movie because you'll be definitely surprised. And, Channing does a very good job. And Mark Ruffalo, I believe, the guy that plays the Hulk in the Avengers, he plays David. So a pretty good cast as well. So one of those movies where it's about wrestling and sports, but it doesn't come off too cheesy. So you definitely check it out in the cinemas.
Yeah, definitely check out Foxcatcher. Not a movie, but our Twitter at SubmissionAUS. Check that out. If you enjoy the show, guys, subscribe and don't forget to like it. We will be back next week. We've got some awesome guests loaded in the bag. We're not going to be announcing them just yet, but we will be shortly announcing them on our Twitter. If you have any questions for our guests, you can always hit us up on Twitter. Again, that's at SubmissionAUS. Dennis, any last final parting words for the fans?
Yeah, guys, if you still haven't had a chance, check out our interview with Judo Gene LaBelle. It was one of those moments for me and Casper when we were able to talk about him working with Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris, doing the fight scenes for Elvis in his movies, first ever televised MMA fight. He's Ronda Rousey's uncle. This guy's done it all. He was even in Rush Hour. Make sure you check that out. And Don Fry, Big Don Fry, what can I say? People have come out in support for this interview. They've really enjoyed it. He talks about a whole bunch of stuff. Make sure you check it out if you haven't. That's youtube.com/submissionradioau.
Awesome. We'll see you guys next week.